right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ashland Board of Selectmen meeting for November 7th, 2018. Is there anyone here who's recording other than WACA-TV? Just let us know. Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm going to ask Mark, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Would you be willing to do that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. All right. Just vision statement. Joe, do you want to read the vision statement?
Sure, I'd be happy to. 'Cause that's what the problem I have is my vision. The vision statement, the town of Ashland will be prosperous and physically sound community with a full range of housing, business, cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities in a safe and attractive environment for all residents and visitors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mission statement, Steve, you want to do the mission?
Sure, just bear with me, I don't have the large type version here, so. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management, advocating for sustainable development and growth, and providing excellent municipal services which will enhance the quality of life in our diverse community. The Ashland Board of Selectmen is committed to providing clear goals and objectives for town management and creating effective engagement and public participation with residents, state legislators, and other elected officials in order to achieve our mission.
Okay, thank you. And just wanted to note, of course, we had big election day yesterday. It was a great turnout, and just wanted to note that. And of course, it's, I think, a great benefit to us all that the public safety building was passed overwhelmingly. So I wanted to thank the residents who supported it and the town staff and the other members of the board who supported it and worked on it for so many years. Especially, I think, you know, our town manager and the chiefs worked very hard on this. So I just wanted to note that. So thank you all for your support, and I don't know if other members wanted to just comment.
I think it's important also to make note of the poll workers. They had a horrendously long day yesterday and did yeoman's work, so, you know, kudos to the town clerk's office and all the volunteers that spent many hours at the high school, so thank you.
I'll save my comments for the
Okay.
board reports.
Very good, thank you. All right, so we're a little late, but I want to, I'm going to announce a public hearing for a street layout hearing for Royal Colony Road. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a layout hearing for Royal Colony Road, plan dated October 9, 2018. This plan is subject to modifications as per the Planning Board. A public hearing will be held on the matter at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. On Wednesday, November 7th, 2018 at 7:05 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard in this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Selectman's Office, Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. Signed, Rob Scheer, Chairman. All right, anyone in favor, speaking in favor of this street layout hearing for Royal Colony Road? Just come up and identify yourself and your association with the layout hearing.
Paul Beatty, I'm the attorney for the Fafford organization, here tonight presenting the petition that the planning board is behind. There was a punch list that was prepared. Virtually all the items are done. Mr. Pizzeri, who is with me, has worked years on this. And again, we are fully cognizant that to our recollection and to our knowledge, and we believe to GCG's knowledge, who is the town's engineering consultant, that everything is done. There is one minor issue that we want to work with the planning board on. We've offered a $2,000 cash bond for a minor puddling at 1 or 2 driveways, and we're willing to come back. Again, it's getting late in the year, And with that, we'll post that money in escrow until the infrared procedure that is, we believe is needed, and it's a minor procedure, is completed in the spring. And we've made that offer to the planning board. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me.
Okay, hold on a second. So, anyone else speaking in favor? Any other details? Okay. Anyone opposed to this or has questions? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Dayo Oshimboni. I live at number 16 Royal Colony Circle.
Okay.
Two issues here. I don't think the work is deemed complete. The last time we were here, he just mentioned about the puddling. There is puddling that occurs in front of my driveway whenever it rains. It's significant, and we mentioned it the last time we came. That hasn't been addressed. I think because of the relationship we've had, I think it's best that this be done before the road gets handed over. Second issue here is on the circle. We were here the last time. There was weeds and it wasn't properly done. So we requested that landscape fabric be laid because we are of the understanding that it will be the town's responsibility once it's handed over. So I think as a people, we're all looking for something that requires very little maintenance. So what Farfad has done is I believe they've laid the landscape fabric,
Yeah.
but they've sprinkled mulch on it. I have pictures on my phone. It has barely been a week or maybe 2 weeks that's been laid. If we're thinking about long-term longevity of that space,
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to lay a certain amount of depth of mulch that will withstand rain and what may. It's sprinklings. If you go walk on the circle now, you can see the landscape fabric all over the place. It's not covered in mulch. I think we had discussed or we had requested that they entertain the thought of maybe putting stones. We made the request to the planning board.
I see.
I think the issue with putting more mulch on that space is the depth, the height of the paving of the circle is not that. If you put extra mulch, I think it will fall into the street. I don't think the paving is high enough to take as much. So even if they added more mulch, I think it will require a few more times for it to rain and things will wash over.
Oh, right.
So I don't think that's complete in any sense. I think at the end of the day, we'll think about, as a town, especially if the responsibility is going to fall on the town, let's do it best now. Let's plan for success so that everybody can touch that space minimally.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do we have a response to that? As a town, is it, are these issues that we should consider before we accept it? Is this come under the purview of what we're,
I would think this would come under the purview of the planning board.
so,
Because this is the first that we've made aware of it. The gentleman said that he was here, but he wasn't in front of our board. You were probably in front of the planning board,
well,
sir.
I see
Okay.
Preston's
We do have the
approaching.
chair of the
Yeah,
planning board.
so let's hear from Preston.
Preston Crowe, Chair of the Planning Board. Everything the gentleman said is correct. There was a lot of concern that the landscaping situation on the island in the middle of the cul-de-sac was inadequate, and that it would soon be just weeds. So the solution was to put down landscaping fabric that prevents the weeds from coming up, and they did that. And that was, this was something that was done, I believe, after our final hearing, or immediately before, like that day or the day after, I don't remember for certain. And when it was done initially with the mulch on top of it, it looked nice. If it's not holding up, then, you know, I'm not sure what the right remedy is to make it look nice, but eventually, you know, if this doesn't get fixed before the town accepts it, as the gentleman said, it becomes the town's responsibility. And I don't think the town has a good history of maintaining these kinds of things. So if there's something you would like them to do, I would have no objection to your saying, this needs to be fixed, and if you've got a good idea, that's fine.
Preston, if I may, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go
Chair, if I
ahead.
may, when this came in front of your board, were there any alternatives that you have suggested prior to the bark mulch and material layment down? Was there anything else? I know the gentleman said something about crushed stone or something of that nature.
The gentleman did suggest crushed stone. The planning board wasn't excited about that look, but also just having mulch that's just going to wash off into the road and leave exposed landscaping sheet, that's not great either. So I don't know what the right solution is. Sometimes these islands are hard.
Yeah, go ahead, Yolanda.
Question, so what's the size of the island? Because I can't, on the plan that I'm looking at, it's not very obvious. And when the developer was putting this in, was there any suggestion given to the developer to actually do plantings or something on the island?
I believe there are some trees.
There is some plantings on the island. There's trees and bushes.
But no low ground cover to make it look good?
No.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
A question, and I think even, to me, even a little bit more concerning, sir, you mentioned about water pooling in front of your driveway.
Yeah.
Can you address that a little bit more? I mean, is it, you indicate that it's substantial. What,
Yeah, so
what does
whenever
that
it
mean?
rains in front of the driveway, there's a puddle of water that collects in front of the driveway. They've known about this for a while because we brought it to the board the last time we came. So that was part of the complaint.
But he also said, the lawyer also said that they were gonna be addressing that.
Right.
They're gonna be putting 2,000 cash bond for the puddling issue. So
Yeah.
this is the issue that he's talking
Okay.
about, is what you're putting money aside for.
Correct.
Okay. Is the planning board, what is the planning board's position on this request here to accept the road?
It would be nice to have the road accepted and have everything done before the winter, but, the residents have made it very clear they would prefer to have the town plowing the road than the developer. At the same time, if we don't feel that it's really ready for street acceptance, it's not ready.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'd
Ed-
like, yeah.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair,
ahead, sure.
has the town ever taken into consideration plowing a road with the understanding that the developer will complete the necessary work that needs to be done in the springtime? I know there's a $2,000 bond that they're setting aside, but I don't know if $2,000 is gonna be enough to do the work that needs to be done, especially if there's that type of pooling of water that, sir, that he's explaining to us. I don't know if it needs to be re-leveled or repaved to that point, and it's $2,000 is surely not gonna be amount to cover that. So is there anything that we could do as a town to at least provide the plowing for the residents there, for protection and for safety and security? And then, in the springtime have,
Well, why would we want to do that if we don't accept the road, though? I guess that's,
well, because we've done it for other non-accepted roads in the past.
oh, okay.
So I was just trying to think something out loud to make it a little
Sure.
bit more palatable for everybody.
Should we bring these guys back up to talk about what they're,
Sure.
go ahead, Preston.
I just want to say, I don't believe the planning board weighed in on the amount of the bond. I think
Oh.
that was something that has come
Okay.
up after our hearing. That was an issue we
So the
need.
bond for the puddling issue, you guys
Yes.
didn't address
I
that.
don't
That's
think
just-
I don't think we addressed the amount, because at the time of our hearing, the proper remedy was not determined. We didn't know for sure what the proper remedy would be.
Well, what would you recommend besides the puddling issue, we had this issue with the mulch or the coverage, or, like, what else?
Landscaping for the
The
island.
landscaping for that island. So is there other conditions we should put on, or requirements before we approve this? Do we need to put it on town meeting? Is that,
Well, and then I have a question
ahead.
related to the island that's there.
This
So,
report doesn't
does
show
it
anything.
become town property if it's in the middle of the street, the island, or is it somehow related to the homes that are there?
I'm quite certain it's part of what is being accepted as part of the street.
That's my understanding as well.
We're not, I mean, I don't expect us to go out there and have our public works
Yeah.
department weed we have many islands that if we're lucky, they get mowed.
Yeah,
So,
right?
It's no different from the little grass strip between the sidewalk and the road that the town doesn't maintain,
Right,
even
so
though
if
it's
it's
town
in front of
property.
your house, you'll go and you'd mow that.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Alright.
So could we ask them to improve the landscaping on the island, that it would be something that has some, low ground cover so that it's a little more durable without having to have a lot of maintenance?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an option for the developer to look at that. I mean, they might be able to do it now. Well, actually, now would be a good time.
Yeah, it seems, I agree, it seems like an easy fix at this point, to get that accomplished before winter. Just,
I think originally they
Well, hold on a second,
If
so,
Can you get the microphone?
is there, anyone else has comments on this from the public, before we hear from these guys? So, yes, if you could just respond to some of these concerns.
So Jeff Pizzeri, Site Supervisor for FRE Builders. So originally, the island was going to be a grass, and speaking with the DPW Director, in a point that was brought up earlier, that most of the islands are not maintained by the town because they just can't get to them. We had an issue come up where, discussing with the planning board, we decided to mulch it and do some plantings according to the landscape plan. The plantings were already on the landscaping plan, but
Okay.
we said we would mulch it instead of grassing it and then having beds to make it even more, more maintenance issue. And then as we progressed, some weeds did show up, so we readdressed it, and we put the fabric down and remulched it. And it has held up pretty good, but there are some areas where we've got rounds around the trees, and that has the fabric, and the round areas that hold the water for the trees, obviously, since it's a bump, the rain has exposed some of the fabric in those areas. But the island looks good, and the fabric is holding back the weeds, and it's only been a couple weeks. But that was the solution that we had come up with that seemed to get everybody together on keeping it as low maintenance as possible, but yet keeping it attractive to the residents.
Could you add some ground cover kind of plants? That way you're not relying completely on the mulch? I mean,
I don't know, it's a fairly large island, and,
Mulch.
it's a question of sustainability too, would
Well,
they
then
live?
But who's
you
gonna
know?
sustain it with the mulch?
Ye-
Is the
yeah.
concern, right? You're putting the
Yeah.
mulch on it now. As we all know, for mulch to work, you need to replace it every couple of years. It needs to
Right.
be 3 inches deep. There's all kinds of stuff in relates to mulch.
Sure.
If it's not 3 inches deep,
Right.
even with the ground cover, with the fabric there, it's
Right.
not gonna do much after a year or two.
Yeah. I think the concern we had too when we first started doing it, because it was talk of it being grassed, was it just all dying and being
Right.
a dead area.
Yeah,
'Cause, so it comes down to, what's the best alternative, and what can you
Well,
do?
I think we just need to leave it natural, but something won't be too tough to maintain, I guess. No one's gonna maintain this on an ongoing basis.
Unless the residents choose to try to do something with it, right.
Right. Which they might.
All right.
Okay.
Preston, did you wanna say something else? No, you're just, all right, should we increase the bond? Should we hold this off until,
Well, I'm kind of curious, who came up with the $2,000
Yeah,
bond?
that would be
does
my
someone
question.
want to address that? Do folks have anything else they wanna ask or say? I see, okay, hold on, all right.
Paul Beatty again. It's my understanding that was a discussion tossed out by Jeff Pizzeri to Sheila Page, the town planner. There were discussions in that regard. This infrareding is a very minor area. The flooding is not large at all. The puddling is not large at all. It's very, very small, and that's why $2,000 is,
So you think an asphalt guy can get in there and fix it for
Yes.
2,000?
Yeah.
yes.
In this
It's a
time of
small-
year?
It's a small snake-shaped puddle along the edge of the driveway,
Alright,
and I
so
was
you-
up there with Doug Small, the DPW director, so.
Okay.
Okay, my only concern, and I appreciate all the effort that you're putting towards this, but we know how water works. And water will find an easy access to find its lowest point. And the lowest point could be under this gentleman's driveway, which means it's gonna undermine the driveway, and he's gonna get cracking 4 to 5 years from now. How can he's gonna have to replace that, and it's not from his doing. It's a natural regress of the water that's finding its lowest point. And if it happens to be there, and it's under his driveway, I can see why he has a concern with the puddling now. You're not gonna see it now because it's fairly new, but in 3 to 5 years, that could happen.
I think part of,
Suggestions, yeah.
part of
I think you had this discussion with Sheila, but I think it was really more, I think Doug's recommendation to do the bond, and I think, and the amount, and I think specifically they were looking at doing some kind of infrared
Correct.
work, and the reason they couldn't do it now is because they couldn't find a company to do it, and I think the bond was to help do that. But you bring up a good point, which is how, you
How
know,
this affects this gentleman's driveway.
yeah,
in-
and
in
how
the
do
future.
you know,
Right.
is there,
So is there any way, with respect to this infrared test that they're going to do? And I don't know if you're gonna see anything now, but could that be part of the infrared testing, would be this gentleman's driveway in that area to see if there is any structural damage underneath there? I mean, believe me, I'm not an engineer, I'm far from it, but I am a homeowner, and that happened to my driveway, and I ended up having to do it all over again. So, yeah, I get concerned about that.
yeah.
The puddling in question is right at the apron at the road, so it's not so much on his driveway, it's at the apron, right at the road.
Well, I understand it, but the water has to go someplace.
Yeah,
And
and
if it's going
it runs away from to the catch basins, away from that area, it's just a little,
Well, that,
it's a little
it's
area.
supposed to.
Yeah, it's supposed to, right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We're not sure of that yet.
Any other, I'm sorry.
Well, sorry, just one other thing.
Sure.
Could we, because we're not sure of what the cost is gonna be, I'm sure Doug has given you a good estimate, would you be willing to increase the cash bond so that for next spring, when you're doing this, we know the cost may go up, things like that you'd be willing to,
Certainly, what, 4 or 5, would that do it?
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
would be
sounds good.
fine with me.
Any,
have no
any
problem.
particular comments? Did you guys want to say anything else with this solution? I'm just trying to.
So regarding the circle, it's not just the plants, it's not where the plants is where you can see the landscape fabric. I have pictures on my phone. It's all over. And as you said you might require 3-inch depth, nothing close to that. So let's do it right. Let's do it well.
So you want to put a thicker layer of mulch, is that?
So the challenge with that is from the floor to the top of the, where the circle is, I don't think it's high enough to.
The curbing
curb
isn't high
is
enough
not
to
high
keep
enough.
the mulch inside the
Correct.
curbing.
It wouldn't. It would spill over. So I'm not sure what the laws say regarding the height of that. But if you added more mulch, if it rains, it will wash
It's just
over.
gonna go.
So is it a Cape Cod berm that you have around?
Slope granite.
Sloped granite, okay.
Oh,
So maybe you need to regrade it so it's not gonna run off. I don't, he's already got granite in place there, so
Sure.
I'm not sure we're gonna require more than
yeah,
that,
we
right?
can
No.
require
So
more
all we're
change.
asking for is for them to do the right thing. Because once this gets.
Well, the right thing is what, to regrade it so it doesn't run off? Or are you saying it's too high and it's coming over the curbs? I'm not sure.
Right, currently, you can see the fabric.
Oh, the fabric.
Doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. And
Suggestions from the board?
even the plants are sparse. I'm not sure if that's according to plan.
Well, it'll grow up, I'm sure
I would expect,
stuff will
depending on
grow
what
up.
the plants are, they'll spread eventually, not knowing what they are, I can't tell you. But I would think eventually, if you have some kind of ground cover, it does spread and covers more of the ground.
Sure.
So,
So-
The other thing, I think they've already made a commitment to make sure that it's done and done correctly. You made a suggestion that maybe 3 inches, and that's what the typical
Right.
mulch requirement is usually 3 inches.
so maybe as part of when they come back in the spring to finish this, they do another redo
A
of
three-
the island
of 3
with the
inches.
3 inches of
Right.
mulch.
Yeah.
And, that's graded
And then go
properly,
from
so
there.
it's not gonna run off like
Right.
he's saying.
And the other thing with respect to neighborhoods, I know that a lot of neighborhoods in the town, even my neighborhood as well, we have a specific little island at the end of the roadway that has a street sign on it. And we all take turns decorating it, maintaining it, putting planters there to make it look nice.
Sure.
So that may be something that you make this a neighborhood event type of thing to get, a neighborhood party and do something of that nature. That's what keeps the neighborhood together too.
I don't think we're opposed to that.
Okay.
I think we'd happily do that.
Okay.
But I think it's important that we get it at the right state.
Oh,
Sure.
to
I
start with.
agree.
All right,
No,
So
thank
if
you.
if we
Thank
on
you.
that
Thanks.
same
Let's-
level, I think we'll be okay.
All right, so, any other, so I've never done one of these where we actually put on conditions, so do we need to write something up?
They've agreed,
Contingent.
they've already said they're gonna do the bond, they're willing to do it up to $5,000, and they're willing to remulch the island in the spring.
So do we
But
need
we
to-
can
a
condition the motion to
We can condition
include.
Yeah.
To include that.
So why don't we,
Yeah.
can someone do that?
Yep. Okay, I move that we,
One sec.
okay.
Sir.
Is it important that we add specifics of what they do? Because they could just come in the spring and just dump mulch on top.
Well, we're
and it
going to,
flows up.
we're going to do the motion
It's
now.
gonna be part of the motion.
So thank you.
Thank
Go ahead, Yolanda, let's see if we,
Okay. I move that we approve the street layout for Royal Colony Road, provided that they complete the remaining items required by the DPW director and the town planner and add this to the special town meeting warrant. Those items are that they are going to have a $5,000 cash bond to review and fix the puddling issues, and that they're going to add up to 3 inches of mulch to the island landscaping in the spring.
and before, so we just want to discuss that, because we actually have to close the hearing before we vote on this.
Mhm.
So any discussion on Yolanda's motion?
No.
All right, so I'm going to
Motion to close the
motion
hearing.
to close the hearing on the layout for Royal Colony Road.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Opposed, none. Hearing is closed. Okay, so Yolanda has made a motion. Do I have a second for
For
the motion?
second here?
All right, so all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much, appreciate it.
And thanks for your participation. All right.
Yes.
So just
Well,
a,
thank
just
you
a
all.
note, I passed over public citizens' participation, but we may get back to that after these hearings. But is there anybody here for citizens' participation? I do intend to, but I'm not doing it right now, Mark. I just wanted to get an idea. So it's you. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so we're going on to our next street layout hearing. So I'm opening a street layout hearing for Tideman Road. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a layout hearing for Tideman Road, plan dated September 27th, 2018. This plan is subject to modifications per the Planning Board. Public hearing will be held on the matter at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass., Wednesday, November 7th, 2018 at 7:10 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Selectman's Office, Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. Signed, Rob Scher, Chairman. Okay, anyone here to speak in favor of the layout? All right.
Hi, my name is Steve Hickey. I'm with Richmond Development. We are the people that built the road and
Okay.
sold the houses.
Great.
We've been through this with the planning board, had a couple hearings. The planning board has approved it to go to you. Punch list has been completed. That's it.
Great,
Not
okay.
much more to say.
All right, thanks, Steve. Is there anyone speaking against? Anybody else wants to speak on this?
DPW has approved all the work.
Preston, anything we need to know?
Any additional information? All right, comments or deliberation by the board?
Seeing that everything is done and there's no, no complaints.
All right.
Looked at this one before.
Can I get a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Motion, hearing's closed. All right, I have a suggested motion.
I move that we approve the street as laid out for Tideman Road, provided that they don't have to do anything. The layout for Tideman Road, and then it gets added to the special town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Second?
All those in favor of motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. That's a motion carries. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we had hearings, thank you all, thanks, Steve. So we had a hearing at 7:15, which has been withdrawn, so I'm going to go a little late, but not too bad, only 15 minutes late, not an hour and 15 minutes late.
So this is the one that we had last meeting, and we forwarded to this one, and they've withdrawn
Right.
it now.
Correct. He didn't have all the information, so he may reapply in the future.
Thank you.
All right.
What is this? I'm sorry.
The auto place that was going for a Class 2 license, and he wasn't
Alrighty.
here at our last meeting.
Yes,
All right.
okay.
So I'm going to, this is a
Yes, no,
I'm gonna open this continued public hearing on the dog hearing, the dog named Coco. Is there, I think, well, Mike, why don't you give us a report? At the last, we had some legal questions and some jurisdiction questions. And we've heard from town council, so why don't you just update everyone on that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there were really three outstanding questions that the board had asked for some clarification on. First was whether or not the Board of Selectmen must act on this hearing, or act as the hearing authority on this hearing. I think there was a question as to whether or not the board should recuse itself, and if it could recuse itself. Town council reviewed both the bylaw and also the statute that relates to this, this hearing. Although the statute discusses the hearing authority, and it generalizes it to mean the selectman of a town, the mayor of a city, the officer in charge of the animal commission, the chief or commissioner of a police department, et cetera, et cetera, the town has adopted a bylaw, which is found in Chapter 87, which provides that the board is the one that would, is required to hear this and act on it. The board meaning the Board of Selectmen. There was also a question if there is any conflict of interest here, or any, conflict of interest. Town council has found that just because a person involved in this hearing is a town employee, it doesn't constitute a matter in which the member of the board has a financial interest. As long as it's been disclosed, the board can certainly act, and there is no conflict of interest. So, any questions with regards to that point? And I'll get to the other two. The other two was whether or not a chicken is a domestic pet or farm animal. And let's see, town council has provided that this is not considered livestock or fowl, and that it is considered a pet, or domestic chicken, I should say. Town council has provided some case law in support of that, and also looked at the Department of Fish and Game regulations. And then finally, the board has asked with help in differentiating between a dangerous dog and a nuisance dog. So the general laws, which the bylaw mirrors, defines a dangerous dog as a dog that either without justification attacks a person or domestic animal causing physical injury or death. 2, behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified, imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or to a domestic or owned animal. And then it also talks about a nuisance dog as one that has excessive barking or other disturbance, causing interference, and has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal, or a person. So the clear distinction between a dangerous dog and a nuisance dog is a dangerous dog must attack a person or domestic animal and cause physical injury or death, but a nuisance dog merely threatens livestock, a domestic animal, or a person. So I think with those definitions or those clarifications in hand, given the facts that you have received, I think that should help you make your determination. My recommendation for you tonight is to open it up and see if there's any new information that has come forward since your last hearing, and then at that point in time, close the hearing and do any deliberation and make your decision.
Is there, before I do that, is there any questions to board members on the recommendation?
No, actually, no questions on the, you're talking about the town
The
council
legal,
recommendation?
yeah.
No
Any
question on that, but I do want to acknowledge that I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I do want to acknowledge that I've reviewed the tapes several times. I've reviewed Mass General Law, so I think I'm more than prepared to adjudicate this situation.
And so my reading of what town council is advised is that this is a dangerous dog. Is that, do people agree with that or disagree? Pardon me?
Correct, straight definition, because it
Okay.
killed animals.
Right, okay. Is there anyone, do we have any updates from anybody who can add some, since the last hearing, care to get us any new information? Yes, ma'am. Do you want to come up to the, just microphone? I don't know if you have a progress report or any other information?
I don't have any new information like new killing events or anything like that, but
Well,
I also looked up the definition of a chicken, and its name is Gallus domesticus. So clearly, it is a domesticated animal.
okay.
So, and then you said it's not a livestock or fowl.
Well, I think we've agreed with the definition that I think you would propose at the last meeting, so,
Okay,
I'm not, okay?
thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, updates? The owners here? Kara, do you want to just, especially if you have new information, like what's happened since our meeting, you know, that kind of thing. We did all receive a letter from the training people about what you're doing with Coco in terms
Sure.
of training.
Kara Terrell, 3 Hilldale Place. So in the time that we've had the extension of the hearing, we had adhered to all the, not only the things that we agreed, but all the things that we did, continued to have 3 days a week training, especially with recall, and never have her unsupervised in our enclosed yard, as well as had an actual desensitization training with that type of stimuli. And the result was very favorable according to the several head trainers and the owner of the training company. The other piece is that we have, there's obviously been no further incidents. And I think as far as speaking about the pet, I would think that we're talking about someone who would seek out a permit like you would with any other pet, and that was not done with that, as well as not adhering to the Board of Health code of not having the coop too close. And that's something we
All
didn't
right.
talk about last
So,
time.
Okay, and I think you brought it up, but.
Well,
I'm
not the
sure.
completion, and it is relevant, Rob,
How is it relevant?
because it's talking about whether it's a pet or livestock.
Oh,
and
I see what you're.
someone would
okay.
know if their pet was gone in a day and a half, too.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you talk about the fence at all, or what you've done with the fence, or?
The fence has, we've had a special lock put in place on the front of the fence, and we have the other latch on the inside of the fence, as well as the other 2 egresses are latched with a double chain length fence, locks on both of those as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, just, if you just clarify or just verify the actions that you've taken at this point. So what I have from what I've taken from the last hearing and from any additional information, so right now you're engaged in prey drive training.
Yeah, we have 3 times a
Specifically,
week
prey drive
training, as well as additional training. We did it
Okay.
on a weekend, hour-long
So
training
you've
as
got
well.
reinforcements of your fencing.
Yep, we have constant, she's always in a crate or in a supervised setting.
Okay. Electronic collar, that's
We have an
still-
e-collar that we purchased that was over $400 that
so
we have,
that's
the
being-
Boss.
That's actively used. And just to clarify, the dog is not left unattended.
Correct.
Okay.
And we did all the locks, inside and outside. We also have a special tether that we are now using. That's if we want to have her outside in the yard, even when we're supervising with the e-collar on, there's a special, it's basically like a tether that you can put into the ground. That's pretty high tech. And the trainers were really excited that we bought that. They thought that was a good addition as well.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yep.
All right, so, thank you.
And I just
Oh, sure.
additionally, sorry, Steve, the letter we got from the American Lab Rescue is also about Coco being around over 28 small puppies, smaller animals. We have had 3 cats during this time as well, so.
That was one last question I have for you. Other than the chickens, has there been any other aggressive behavior noticed by Coco?
No. And I had the 3 witnesses last time talking
Yeah.
about allowing their children to not only sleep over my house, but left the dog in the alone with the kids.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Kara.
Thank you,
Yep, thank
Tara.
you.
So, I think we're ready to deliberate and discuss.
Maybe on that.
My suggestion would be, you know, if you have all the information that you need, you determine whether it's a dangerous dog or not. At that point in time, once you've come to that conclusion, you can then look at what your remedies are, and
Yeah.
then juxtapose that with what has already been done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's, okay, so why don't we proceed to that? Okay. All right, so does it,
That was a commercial break, just wanted to let you know.
so,
Dance break.
Rob, you probably want to close the hearing?
well, I thought, but shouldn't we talk about, shouldn't we
Don't we need to
deliberate and
You close the hearing and then
Close the hearing, then we
deliberate.
deliberate after.
So we need a motion to close the hearing.
No, it says, my list, it says deliberation and then close the hearing. Have I been? So, all right, yes, ma'am, if you, yeah, go ahead, just a brief statement, please.
Me too. Sorry.
So, I think the definition of a dangerous dog speaks for itself here. It's not a nuisance, based on the straight definition. I think you kind of said that already, but,
Yes.
and then secondly, I would like to emphasize the opinion of the ASPCA, which I share. It says, enforcement of dangerous dog laws is ultimately the responsibility of local government authorities, and it is important that they, meaning you, exercise your responsibility with vigor and discretion to protect both the public and responsible pet guardians. So according to Chapter 140, Section 157, which is the dangerous dog.
We actually
Yeah.
have
We
that
have
in
that.
I
our
know,
possession, and
yes.
we've read that, so I think
Yes.
we're ready to move on, Susan,
Yes.
and I think we have enough
So-
information.
Why don't
Yes.
we just let her, okay,
I
once
just
you
would
finish
like
your statement.
to follow, the remedies provided by law.
There's 7
Okay.
remedies we're
We're
familiar with.
looking at them, thank you. Okay, so let's go into comments and deliberation. Are you all right, Joe?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just-
So
Fine.
I think we do have that list, and is anyone prepared to make a list, to tell us a list of measures that we want to have taken? You've kind of started on a list. We've
Sure.
heard from,
I think we need
So-
to determine if
Yeah.
it's a dangerous or a nuisance dog.
I think
All right, I
we
thought
need
we
to
kinda
agree
had
on
that.
what
Okay.
the status of the chickens are, the status of the dog, and then
yeah, I thought we'd kind of
the
done that, but, yeah.
remedial
All right.
actions, so,
So all right, so I'll just say, based on council's interpretation, it sounds like it's a dangerous dog. And do people agree or disagree with that, or?
So I'll give you my thought process here based on our legal rulings, and I'm sure I'm not gonna make everybody happy or both parties happy, but, it's clear that the chickens are a domestic pet. No question about that. They're treated as pets. They're not raised for sale or for eating. So I'm assuming we all agree that they're
Pets, yeah.
assuming that they're a pet. By definition, it's clear that the act of the dog defines it as a dangerous dog. So if we agree to those 2 statuses, then, what is an appropriate remedial action here? Now, 157 goes to, if the hearing authority deems a dog a dangerous dog, the hearing authority shall order one or more of the following. So we have a lot of options here in which to apply. My opinion, number 1, qualifies in my estimation here, and it reads that the dog be humanely restrained. So what does that mean, humanely restrained? Does the fencing, the trainings, the collars,
Yep.
having the dog, not having the dog unattended at any time, does that qualify? So that's the question that I would ask the board to
And I
to
would-
discuss.
Okay.
I agree.
Are we gonna do these individually? Because I would say yes to that. believe
I think what, at the end, we want a motion on, I guess we have to formally vote on the status of the dog, is that, and then I think we
have
should,
to formally determine if it's a dangerous dog.
that's what I think the answer is yes.
Think
Yeah,
yes.
to
Yes.
keep it clean, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my suggestion is that we kind of discuss and come up with a list, however we want to phrase it, that we all kind of agree on.
And I think it goes, Joe has talked about this in the past numerous times about progressive disciplines and so on. You know, and how do we address that as part of the motion, in the case that the animal should get loose again or do another event, so,
Okay.
so I think, you know, those are the things that, you know, that are in my thought process.
So we should then have a motion to deem what kind of dog it is, and then
Yes.
close the hearing?
I think
then
so,
make
if
the
we're,
motion.
if we're then ready to make a
Okay.
motion, yes.
I move that we deem, based on the.
Oh, I'm sorry, we should take that vote after I close it, I think.
Okay.
Don't you? Yeah. But is there any further discussion on the status of the dog? Any further discussion on the measures to be taken? We think we have a motion ready for that? Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
All right, so then I think we can close a motion to close the public hearing.
So
Second.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Hearing's closed. Okay, so I think, Yolanda, your motion?
Yes, I move that based on the definition of a dangerous dog because of the death of the chickens, that we deem Coco a dangerous dog.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The motion carries 4-0. Okay, Steve, are you ready with your list?
So, well, I guess, do we need to discuss this? I mean,
I
that was,
think one-
again, those were my
So-
considerations.
So my question to you, Steve, do you have other things that they're recommending, the 1 through 7, that you're gonna propose? Or is that what you said is your
No, I'm,
proposal for
at
what we
this,
should do with Coco?
at this point, and based on the premise of, you know, progressive
Discipline.
discipline, you know, I think this is a good starting point, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Which is where we did it at the last hearing. We said we're gonna give it 30 days, see
Right.
how things went.
So that would be, my recommendation is to, you know, apply the
The
first
first one.
order,
Humane restraint.
based on these, based on these actions, and if there are future events, then we will address it
Address them
differently,
at future
individually, right?
events,
And
right.
do we want to detail the measures like that Karis listed, or do you think
Well, I
just
think
the
those should be in
generals?
the motion,
Those-
like
those-
we've done in
Okay,
the
so
past.
are you ready to do that? That's what I guess I'm asking.
Well, again, I mean, is everybody,
I'm comfortable with what you
with-
said.
Right.
okay,
So, yeah.
so,
That falls under the progressive discipline style of doing things, and
And
I'm
as
all
was
for that.
stated, it is our discretion as to what should happen with a dangerous dog, even though, you know, because, as I asked, it's the chickens, it's been one incident. I mean, we were told that it had tried to get the chickens before and it didn't, but it's only been the chickens that this dog has attacked. So I
That we
think.
are aware of, that we reported to.
No, and I
Unfortunately,
mentioned that.
right, but unfortunately, what's in front of us is that one incident that was reported to us. We can't act on something that wasn't
Well,
reported
no, I
to us.
addressed
Right.
the fact
No,
that
I know
it had
that.
tried to get them the last time, one time, and it didn't, and this time, unfortunately, it did.
Right.
so,
I meant the other neighbors, sorry.
so to, I guess, clarify the motion, and it's based on the hearing authority shall order one or more of the following. So the motion would be that the owner of Coco shall humanely restrain the animal, provided, I'm gonna read this section, provided that no order shall provide that a dog deemed dangerous be chained, tethered, or otherwise tied to an inanimate object, including but not limited to a tree, a post, or a building, and that this motion will be conditioned by the following requirements and actions: continued and additional prey drive training, additional fence reinforcements, the use of an e-collar, and the requirement that the dog is not left unattended.
Okay.
Is that
Second.
covered?
That covers it
Yes,
for me.
that covers it for me.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Okay, thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you.
All right, thank you all for that. Okay. Oh, so, yep, we're done with that. All right, so we'll go on. This next agenda item is 128 Main Street and the potential land taking. are there people here that want to speak on this measure, on this item?
The previous item or the new item?
The new one.
The new item, yes. Any,
Progressive training is not in the law.
okay, Susan, we're done with that, I think, all right, thank you.
There's, just to clarify, if, there are remedies, Susan, if you're not happy with our ruling,
Okay.
there's steps that you can take, just to clarify that.
What would that be?
Well, the law speaks to district court.
Okay. Great, they will be reviewed.
So I'm just saying, it's built into the law.
No, that's great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, just show of hands, people intend to speak on this or concerned, so I'm just trying to see how much time we have available. Okay, so, all right, so this was, as you may have heard, the Board of Selectmen over the past whatever time has been concerned about the project at 128 Main Street in various ways, and there's been various discussions about it, both with the planning board and amongst us as a board. So it was felt that we'd put it on the agenda, just for an open discussion. And so with that, I'm just going to, I think, just kind of characterize some of the concerns of the magnitude of the building, the height, the closest to the street, the number of housing units, et cetera. And all these have been talked about a lot, so I don't have too much else to say about it. But is there people here who want to come up and talk to us about it? Go ahead. Well, why don't you go ahead, Cliff? We'll
Preston.
Rob, would you like me to
sure. Hold on, Cliff.
clarify just like where things are with the process with the project, or?
Sure,
that
if
would
you want.
probably be
Yeah.
beneficial.
I would let Preston start.
Okay.
So
Sure. That makes sense.
I think the initial application was submitted back in September of 2017. I can't say for sure, but the applicant has been before the planning board many times over a year. The planning board has worked with them. The planning board, I think, issued a decision, an approval, I think, last month. And so I think it's still, that approval has been issued. It's still before the Conservation Commission, I believe, for a stormwater permit.
Okay. I should note that Carl Hackett, one of our members, was not able to be here tonight. And so I'm just, Preston's the chair of the planning board. I see he's out there, so you've been very involved in this project, so if you have anything you wanted to say.
Yes, the planning board spent a year on this project. It started with 17 units. We pared it down to 13. We've looked at many things we can do to improve this project. It is consistent with our zoning. It is a by right project, and the only major waiver that they obtained was for a reduction in the parking requirements. I feel that through the planning board process, we've gotten something that is certainly much better than they originally submitted, and something that is a net positive for downtown. I'm kind of concerned about the Board of Selectmen doing backseat planning board work. My toes are feeling a little bruised, to be blunt.
Preston, just a question about the parking waiver. Can you explain that a little bit?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but based on the number of units and the square footage of commercial space, they're normally required to have a certain amount of parking unless the planning board but the zoning also allows the planning board to allow a smaller amount, so they don't have to get a variance for that.
Right.
And the planning board, in working with them and with the number of units being reduced, agreed to grant that waiver.
Okay, so, because I know that's been one of the concern of people. So you reduce the amount of parking that they need to
Yeah.
provide.
Essentially, there's enough parking for the residents and for the commercial. They would probably be parking mostly in the municipal lots.
So why do they need a waiver? You said it's in line with the number of units, so why did they need a waiver?
The calculations based on the zoning come out with a higher number than what is there. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't tell you what.
Joe might.
Can I just speak for the
numbers I remember.
Sure,
It
sure.
was 21 spots, and we gave them a waiver.
Could
for-
you identify
Yeah,
yourself?
Joe Rubertone, 27 Lakeview Terrace, member of the planning board.
Okay.
It was a 21 spot requirement, and I believe
Joe, you may need to get closer so they can.
it was a 21 spot requirement. We gave them a waiver for 4 spots, 17 spots.
And,
Sounds right.
okay. All right, thank you. So before we get into, anything else, Preston?
No, I
You'll
think
be
that's
here
all I have
for
to say.
questions. All right, thank you. So, any members of the board want to say anything before we get into hearing from folks, or? No? Okay,
Let's hear from them first.
yeah. So let's hear from people. So, Cliff, you want to come up and talk? And
Invite them to line up and stand.
yeah, you may
Yes,
want to,
sure.
people, that's a good idea. If people want to speak, if you're okay to stand and wait, that gives us an idea who else wants to speak.
Excuse me.
If you
Cliff-
can't stand for extended periods, let me know and we'll accommodate that. Sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
Cliff Wilson, 378 Elliott Street. My first question is, what is it that we're actually discussing about tonight? Is there a question of doing one thing or another? There was talk about
Well,
eminent domain.
it was felt that we should put that on in case we had extensive discussion about it. So
Okay.
it's kind of just to make sure we comply with the open meeting law, and no one's taken by surprise. So if people want to discuss it, that's fine. If they don't, then they don't, so.
All right, I mean, I've been following this through, and I have no issues with the planning board. I will say in that regard of them originally coming in with 17, and it got cut back to 13. That's typical with any plan, is that you always go in and you ask for the most, and then when you give a little, everybody looks good. I don't agree with that, but that's the way it works. But there's a bit of a conundrum here, and the problem that I have, and I just want to bring it before you, is earlier this evening when I was having supper, the person sitting at the table next to me was, as far as I know, the owner of the building. Now, the owner of the building isn't the one who's been submitting these plans, to the best of my knowledge. The owner of the building said to me, "Gee, I hope they pass that and take it by eminent domain." So I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Well, then I'd get rid of the problem with the 50-year lease that's on that building." It just seems to me that there's a bunch of stuff. Evidently, there's a builder who, or let me rephrase that, there's a landscape architect who is going to be a builder, I guess, who is the one who's been submitting these plans, but he doesn't own the building. So maybe there's an agreement that he will buy it if he can do it, but then there's this 50-year lease that's in place. So I'm very confused as to what really is going to be. It's not so much the building itself, although I think the building looks stupid. It looks like something that belongs in Marshfield because of the tides or something, but that's neither here nor there. I think it's also foolish in that you have north-facing open garages in the winter in Massachusetts, but that's the problem that somebody will have to face that lives there. But my problem is who are we doing the favor for? Somebody who really has no vested interest other than the fact that they've spent money on plans? I mean, I buy a lottery ticket and I hope to win, but, if I don't, is it your fault that I didn't win? So I don't want to hear about builders who spend money on plans and then things don't work out to their agreement. That's a risk you take when you're a builder.
Sure.
But I am curious as to about who's really being served. If the owner wants to get rid of the property, and the person who's going to build doesn't own the property, and then they're going to have a problem with a lease, what is really going on? That's my question.
All right, is there someone prepared to address that? This is the legal status of the proponent. I think Cliff is questioning their ability, their legal right to propose this and do this work.
Well, I mean, I will say typically what happens is you have a landowner and you have a developer. And usually the developer is the one that applies for the permits And usually that purchase and sale and them acquiring the land is contingent on them getting that permits. So the developer sometimes doesn't, oftentimes, at least in my experience, doesn't own the property until the permits are issued and there's a closing date.
And
As far as the legal stuff, I don't know. I've heard a lot of stuff, kind of spread around about this agreement and, whether there is one in place, whether there isn't one in place.
So I think, all right, would
I
it
don't
be
know about
useful to
that.
have Steve address this? He seems to think he knows something about this. So you just want to talk to this legal question?
Yes, Steve Greenberg, 350 America Boulevard and other locations here in town. I've been involved with this property prior to this particular developer having it under contract. And there is an agreement.
Steve, what's your involvement with this property?
I represent the owner. I represent the Alberinis.
The owner,
as a
that
real
Cliff,
estate-
the person Cliff is referring to.
I wasn't at,
Okay,
I'm guessing
sure.
Burnham's.
Okay.
I'm guessing Burnham's.
Okay, all right. So
And
you
I'm-
represent the owner.
I represent the Alberinis to sell the property. And we put the property under agreement with Carlos Hanzi, who has been in front of the planning board and conservation and others. In that process, there's an agreement, a purchase and sale, and as Mr. Herbert mentioned, a developer can't get in front of a planning board unless he has site control. And
That's what the PNS
that's what the
does.
purchase and sale is
Okay.
for. And there's been a purchase and sale agreement in place for quite a while, because it's taken quite a while. And in addition to that purchase and sale, the Alberinis did enter into a long-term lease many, many years ago, and that lease has a period that goes beyond this date and ends, I don't know exactly when, maybe 12 or 15 years. But the person that has that lease also has an agreement with the Alberinis, once permits and approvals are obtained, that they will hand over that space vacant.
And I will presume that the planning board would have reviewed this kind of documentation as part of their process. Is it
Well,
right?
again, I think, and I don't want to speak for the planning board,
Right.
but, and I've been in front of planning boards not only in this town and many others, a planning board would not hear
Okay.
a proponent unless they had site control.
Any other questions on this before?
I do, and I appreciate you coming forward and providing that information. And so I followed up again this afternoon with respect to what I had heard earlier. And there was an agreement, but nothing was ever signed, because when there was a decision that was made, the leasee holder asked if she could get 6 to 8 months to help find a location for the current, I'm just, you
Joe,
know,
I didn't bring the document with me. I have it on my phone if you'd like to see it, but that's not,
if it's a
that's not the
signed
case.
document, that's fine, but right now, I'm just telling you what was expressed to me through a very close channel to that individual that you said signed this document. She's under the estimate, she's 99% sure she didn't sign anything, only a verbal agreement without the 6 to 8 months. And actually, the response you got back was from the potential owner and the attorney representing him was no, they weren't willing to do that.
So if we think, I guess
But
I'm
if
just,
Steve has that documentation,
I have the
that would make it a
documentation.
little bit
So-
easier for
and
people to make that
right.
decision.
And I'd prefer it to come from Attorney Jack than from
sure,
myself.
all right.
Sure.
So I'm gonna, I don't know, Yolanda, I'm gonna suggest that
just
if it's a
have one-
legal issue that,
Well,
yeah.
my question is, as we make this discussion, if there's an issue between the landowner and the leasee, I don't know that that is, one, relevant for us to discuss.
Yeah.
I think it's more, we're looking at the process that our planning board has gone through for a year and whether or not we as a board are gonna do something
Sure.
about that.
And so,
So
yeah.
the lease and the legal issues from that perspective are not relevant to either our discussion or our decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I largely agree. The only thing I would add, though, that given this kind of information, we should make sure that the planning board or the building inspector or whoever's in charge of this has made sure that these are the proper documents.
Except that is a legal issue that is between the landowner and the leasee.
Right, except that,
And if there's documents that, I mean, if the planning board has done their process.
that's what I mean,
Then,
right.
but
All I'm saying
again,
is
I
they've
don't know
got-
that that's relevant in regard, if I'm coming forward with a development project and I have an agreement with the landowner, if he has another agreement with someone else, that's not relevant to me bringing my
Yeah,
plans
the only
forward to
thing
the
I would
planning board for
suggest we
approval.
say, right, I get it. So the only thing I would suggest is that the plan should make sure the proper documents are on file and that they are signed. I guess that's the only thing we can do here on this one. Yes,
I'm Brandy Kinsman, 6 Lucy French Way. I'm in support of the development at 128 Main. I just wanted to say I've been following the process through the planning board for the last year. I think that things are moving along in the right direction. My concern was basically the town stepping in at this point and taking control of the land by eminent domain. If there is such a issue with the property, it sounds like it's a legal issue that you guys have no control over. But my concern was the town taking the property by eminent domain after a year plus through the process. So.
all right, thank you.
Roberta Silliman, 28 Woodridge Lane. I've spoken before at the planning board when they've discussed 128 Main, and I want to start off by acknowledging all the work that the planning board has done according to the law and following the bylaws and the hearings. And they've done a lot of work, and they have tried to get some improvements for the town on this building. So I want to acknowledge that, and I don't want Preston's toes to feel bruised. Okay.
Well, that's good.
All right, but here's the dilemma that I see. At each of the hearings at the planning board and at some of the meetings here, there were a lot of residents, a lot of people who came and were very concerned for various reasons about this building. And they were concerned for very legitimate reasons beyond just different feelings about aesthetic style. For me personally, I feel like it's a boat on stilts, and I think it's a very ugly building. But beyond all of that, because that's my personal opinion, and somebody else might think it's gorgeous, I'm really upset that it is smack dab in the middle of the historic town hall, the historic church, the historic cemetery, that newly renovated building, the duplex that was renovated according to historic standards, and even the Ashland House across the street, which is similar style to the Johnstone Inn and other places, and the factory buildings. I mean, it's going to stick out like such an eyesore over there that it just doesn't belong in that historic area. And if we're serious about making a downtown historic district, what are we doing having that building there? So that's one thing. Safety is a huge issue, I think. That corner is almost a blind corner for people coming around from where Sunnyside is. It's a very busy corner, and we're going to add all these people and a 2,000 square foot commercial space with multiple ins and outs kinds of trips for people trying to merge over there and get through that traffic light. I think we're just asking for trouble from a public safety perspective. And the other thing is the traffic. I think that the traffic and the safety. And once this is up, there's no going back. And that's what I think is the conundrum that we have. And the upset here is that the planning board did do their job. It was approved according to law and zoning. So where's the relief? Where's a method of relief for people in town when there's passionate dissension and people really don't want that building? It hasn't been compromised enough in terms of size and appropriateness for the spot. It's not respectful of what's around it. How are people supposed to get any relief for that? How is the town supposed to get any relief? And we're looking at $30 million of hopefully commercial investment in the downtown. If I was a business person, I would look at the downtown and go, it's mishmash. They don't have a plan. Anything goes here. Maybe I'll go someplace else and make my investment. I'm worried about the future for us. I'm worried about that being an eyesore, and I don't think anybody here wants to have that be part of, you know, what people remember about Ashland. And I don't know what the answer is. You know, eminent domain could be a slippery slope, I get that. But I don't see that there is any other solution, and I think we need a solution. So we're looking to you as leaders in town for a solution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. We do not have a plan for downtown per se, like a comprehensive plan, right? We have the that's really a streetscape plan, but we don't have a plan that lays out architectural styles other than the zoning or.
Form-based code.
Yeah,
We have the form-based code, which this is in compliance with, if I'm
Right, but
correct.
It's in compliance with respect to that, they took a piece here, they took a piece there, and, you know, they combined it. They didn't
Right.
take one set design and just stuck with
Yeah.
that design.
So there's a
Bits and
problem.
pieces.
I think we understand that I think we agree there's a problem with the code, right? But
Well,
we also
yeah.
think that the planning board, you know, has approved this building under the code.
Yeah,
Correct.
I will say, I mean, I think, you know, the ARA has done a plan. I believe there was an economic development plan. I believe it was part of the comprehensive plan that was done in 2003. You know, they all talk about density in the downtown, and they all talk about creating a walkable downtown to help support a more vibrant commercial business, or vibrant commercial activity. I don't think they necessarily got into
The details.
you know, like whether a mansard roof is gonna be appropriate here or there, or.
And if a project is seen as oversized or out of keeping with the character, it's not necessarily addressed in these plans, I think. Yes, sir.
Hi, Ryan. Ryan Turncliffe, 21 Rossi Lane. Thanks for your consideration on the issue, and thanks to the planning board for the hard work over the last year. I want to echo just one of Rebecca's points and one that you just made around the plan. You know, I think the project probably should go forward. I'm not necessarily in favor or against it, but I did want to speak to your point about empowerment, and I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to feel empowered to make decisions and to hear the public. I know there was a comment that only a few of us ever show up and comment on these things, but that's the reality, and I think you have to listen to the voices that you hear. The Board of Selectmen should be empowered. You're elected officials. I don't think you should necessarily override the planning board, but I think maybe when there are projects that have this level of involvement, consternation, dispute, that earlier involvement in the process might be helpful. So thanks for your efforts
Sure,
there.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you, Ryan.
I just want to address that because that's a point that we have talked about, a point that I've tried to encourage in the past, and I think we're getting closer to some sort of communication, feedback network
Yeah.
between
All
the Board of
committees.
Selectmen, the Planning Board certainly, the ZBA, the Conservation Commission, early on into these projects, so that we're having this conversation early, and we're information sharing, and, you know, hopefully we can avoid, you know, these kinds of 11th hour angst-ridden discussions, because, you know, this is, you know, to me, I echo what Roberta said as well. I mean, this is, you know, why are we talking about this here and now? You know, it's been a year in the planning board, and where it rightfully resides. You know, the only reason to have it at this point with this board is extreme action, in my opinion. That's really, and I think also you know, I remember the commentary about 21 Main Street. Nobody liked 21 Main Street when it was being built, for a variety of reasons. It could have been, you know, they didn't like the look of it. They didn't like the placement. They didn't like where it was relative to the other buildings. And here it is. It's built. It's occupied.
I think the common, if I could, the common theme is vision, is what's envisioned and who's responsible for that. As members of boards change over years, having a vision that's laid out and agreed to at least by you know, a number of different committees all at once. That's maybe a 5-year or 10-year vision. may help some of
Right.
this. And I think there are different pieces of that puzzle that are out there. They're just not all put together yet. But thank you. I do think it's important that you allow the
Thank you, Ryan.
opportunity to hold this hearing. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Yes, Michael, do you
Yeah,
want to say something?
I appreciate everybody's comments, Ryan especially. I do just want to remind the board that, I mean, you have had opportunities to act on this. You had a development agreement before you, it was before May, so it was back in April, that talked about reducing it to 12 units, had a few of them affordable. There was talk about a waiver
Yeah,
of
we
fees.
tried. Yeah.
There was a number of reasons why that didn't go through. But I agree, even at that point in time, it was a little bit late. I think everybody felt it was a little bit late. But,
Yeah, we did.
yeah.
You
They
did.
haven't dug a shovel yet.
What's that?
They haven't put a shovel in the ground yet. You know, a lot of money was spent, but when you had those discussions with them, it was shortly thereafter. I mean, the planning board made the decision how long ago?
What decision?
To pass, the plan.
It's last
Recently.
month?
Just last month, right?
Yeah.
But we've had these discussions months prior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're behind these discussions. They just didn't want to listen to what we had to say, and I'll say it.
That's right.
End of story.
Yeah.
We gave our 2 cents worth in, and that's, okay, fine. And I appreciate the comment, but I didn't drive over your toes. You walked in front of my car.
Oh, that's it. Oh, there's it. All right, thanks.
Can I
Joe.
trademark that?
You can,
But that-
whatever you like
yeah.
to do.
Okay. Yes, Mark.
Okay. Good evening. Mark
evening.
Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road. And I am for this. And I have the curiosity, first of all, is being in front of here for extreme discussions of detail that have been brought up. My first question through the chairman to anybody can answer, what's the extreme part of it that's got to be talked on?
I'm not sure, you're referring, when you say extreme, what are you referring to?
Your comment, Steve's comment, it's in front of the board for extremes.
Oh, I think he was referring to the possibility of eminent domain. Is that
Yeah,
pretty much everyone's?
that's correct.
Okay. And to, again, through the chairman, to the chairman of the planning board, Preston, yes, they've gone through this a couple times. I've been talking about, I've been with the developer to say yes or no for this, and I'm saying still yes, even though it's been a long time since I last spoke. It is not just because of historical building, but it can be, for lack of a better term, gutted out for future business opportunities. And that's what I'm looking at it for, is that these are future businesses come downtown. There's a place for that.
Okay.
Okay, and it also looks like the downtown still, again, Mr. Chairman, to the town manager,
Okay.
is looking for some sort of twins of buildings that will have a look like a pronounced frame look to the town. Buildings that can be look face value from the road and look ecstatic going all the way down, and have business be together. It's kind of hard to me explain because I'm trying to talk as a designer and as a future person. I'm also saying, as a person, me, is don't put down the form-based codes,
Okay.
because I worked hard to get that going, and it got passed town meeting and Attorney General.
All right, thank
So-
you.
Don't put those down because it is 126 futured. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark, for those observations. I'm not sure anyone needs to respond to those, but okay, yes, sir.
Brian James, 29 Adams Road. I've lived here for 37 years. I've been here all my life. This building should be aesthetically pleasing to the town and fit in with the town. I know maybe it changes from year to year, and with changing in the guards of you know, the different boards and stuff like that. But I know at some point the town did have a vision for new buildings being put in, being aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
The Speedway now, which was Hess, when that building was originally built on Pond Street, it was meant to have, it was laid into the plans to build that building to look aesthetically pleasing, like it fits in. And so, I mean, at some point there was a plan to keep the town look the way it is. I don't know what happened to it, where it went to the wayside, but maybe we should revisit that and look into having a town plan of how downtown should look, because, you know, it's looked the same for 37 years. So why are we gonna put in this big ugly building it doesn't look the same as anything else? Just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So, whatever we need to do to either fix that, or if we do have to go to the extreme, then we should, I would think. And if that came to some sort of vote or a town vote, or I'd vote for that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there other people who want to speak, or? All right, so, yes.
One more thing. One thing that struck me that I just wanted to remind the board of is that in your mission statement that you say that you're dedicated to promoting responsible fiscal management. And I would just say that taking a property by eminent domain that has already been through the planning process is not a fiscally responsible act on behalf of the town. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
On behalf of you.
Comments or thoughts from board members?
Why is everybody looking at me?
Well, 'cause you usually start.
I started shuffling paper.
You started, so, well, I just, you know, and I, for one, you know, don't like this building. I think it's out of scale. I think it's too large. I think it doesn't fit in with downtown. Whether we can actually do, and we have talked, I think Michael's talked to the proponent, the developer for months about trying to get things on it. So we have made that kind of effort. I think the question came up at the end of this, and I think we were either expecting or hoping that the planning board would cut down on the project a bit more, but I have to confess I'm not up on the details of what they have to deal with or what the form-based code requires or doesn't require, so I can't second guess their process here. I'm assuming they followed the proper procedures, and the real question is there anything else that we should do to preserve our vision of downtown? I think one of the things I'm wrestling is we don't seem to have a specific plan that helps us tell developers or ourselves or would support actions we may take. We don't seem to have a publicly sanctioned plan that really addresses the kind of issues that people have brought up, unless they think the planning board did something specifically wrong. And we've tried persuasion, and yes, I think we could potentially, if we felt strong enough, go down that road to say, okay, we're gonna develop this ourselves, that's more in line with our vision. I think part of the problem I'm seeing is that we haven't defined that vision, at least in black and white. So, anyway, other comments or thoughts?
Well, from the get-go, I said that building was too large to begin with. I mean, I haven't changed my stance with respect to that.
Yeah.
That's been my train of thought right along. And I know that Michael has, on behalf of this board, has gone and spoke with the developer and the potential contractor to try to minimize the size. He's even tried to use, a caveat of, possibly helping economically with him, financially with him to get more affordable housing units in, and to help subsidize that cost. So it's not like the town's, throwing it against this individual. We've tried to work with him, continue to work with him.
And I think our vision would not be not to do anything, but to develop it a little differently, I think.
That's all.
That's,
Well, just to make the project a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm using DC and it's the wrong comparison, but there are certain structures that can't be any higher than a Capitol building. Why should anything be higher than the Federated Church Chapel?
It's not.
Well, it's close.
But it's not. It's
No,
not
not
taller
at all.
than
It's
the
very close.
church, and I believe it's not taller than town
Town
hall,
hall. How high?
which are the restrictions on our zone-based.
I understand that. How high is it? Can anybody tell me the exact height of that building?
Okay, is the developer here, or, okay, well, do you want to come speak to us? I don't know.
I'm just rather curious, because if you put that building next to the church, I'm not saying it's gonna be higher than the church, but it's gonna take a good
Sure.
line of
Hi.
sight away from the church.
Do you mind
That's all.
identifying yourself?
Yeah, Carlos Hanzi. I'm the applicant for 128 Main Street. I live 21 Lauren Drive off South Street. Been in town for about 12 years. We did start this process, I think was April 2017. We have a technical review meeting with the town, and I think most of the board was present at that time. I think when we came before planning board was September of 2017. We've been working with planning board throughout about probably a little over than a year. Since the very beginning, I think it's a little over than a year. We did multiple changes throughout the process to please the board and to work with the town, to work with the base code on the base code basis. It's really, we did what we could to work and to make this to fit. And also, you know, there's aspect of financial, if this was really valuable, making the changes and all that. So we came to a conclusion at the end, if we reduce the number of the units so much, there was no financial gain as far as on my end for me to invest the money and move forward. So I think over a little over a month, we finalized the project with planning board, and this was voted and approved with planning board.
Yeah.
At this point, I was scared when I realized that planning board, that the selectman was taking this tonight for discussion. And one thing to be said was I was invited in the middle of the process to sit down and work with the town for housing. I did not look for that. I was searched.
Yeah,
and
you referred to
invited.
Michael.
Michael,
Yeah.
correct. And we did made an effort to work with having, I think the conversation was 20-year or 25-year, right, Michael?
It's 20 years, yeah.
20 years, yeah. But at the end of the discussion, I think we probably talked about a month or so, or a little over, Michael? Do you remember? Yeah.
There were two issues.
Yep.
Number one is, I think, so the payment was based on a 20-year period, but we were asking for the affordability restriction to be in perpetuity.
Right.
I think you had an issue with that. On the other side, the Board of Selectmen decided not to sign the development agreement for a number of reasons, which also waived a number of fees, which was to help
Correct.
compensate for the loss of units.
That's correct. So I don't regret the fact, that I basically stopped my project in the middle of it to work with the town and made an effort to work with Michael and the town to have this project as part of housing. Obviously, I lost probably 4 or 5 months between the beginning to the end of this process. But we moved forward. We made other adjustments after that, and then finally we got approved. And like I said, I'm just trying to understand why this meeting tonight is so relevant for the town. In my understanding, there's one individual of the board that has his strong opinion against the building. And my concern is that this individual is really influencing, this meeting to happen tonight.
Well, I think There's been a number of concerns raised, not just by any one individual.
I
So
think there's
you
one
should address
individual.
those.
Yeah.
Carlos, can you mention the church, discussions with the church?
Yeah, yes, correct. So the church, we did talk with, what's his name? John Ellsworth, our next door neighbor, and we had great discussion with him. He is totally in favor of this project. So, you know, there's like, we did
He's
everything
totally
we
in
could.
favor of the
He's in favor
project?
of the project, correct.
He's just one member of a board that runs that church.
Correct.
I can tell you that there are other people on that board that have come to me and expressed concerns, and I asked them to go to you directly.
Correct, please, yeah, absolutely. So, that's it. I think there's no more for me to say tonight. I think,
All right, can I, just one thing, so I appreciate you coming up and giving your perspective. You've heard the concerns about the building that you're proposing and how large it is and the look of it,
Yeah.
and the parking and the traffic and things like that. Is there anything that you think you could do that you haven't already done to address some of those concerns as
No.
as a citizen who's concerned about the future of our downtown and how it looks?
I'm all for the downtown. I live here for 12 years, so I would really want this to be a vibrant downtown. And I did probably 6 times adjust my initial proposed project. And at this point, I have no regrets. I think this has been approved. This is, has a great consensus, what we have presented. And I think that's what we have, you know, to honor the decision that planning board has made. That's where I'm at. So my last observation is my attorney sent an email to Selectman board. I just want to.
Did you say your attorney?
Yeah,
Okay.
Phil Jack sent
Yep.
a email.
I think we've got that.
So
Mhm.
I would appreciate if this email, somebody could read this email for transparency, so everybody in here knows, for the record.
I don't have it in
If that
front of
could
me.
be read.
I'm not sure why.
If somebody
You-
could.
If you have it, you're welcome to read it, you know.
I'd rather if some from the board.
I read
People-
it, but I did not take a copy of it here because I didn't think it was
It's just for the record.
relevant for the
If,
cons.
Well, it's in,
Mrs.
we
Yolanda,
received
somebody
it,
could.
so.
Well, except that unless we read it, it doesn't go into public record. I'm willing to read it.
Thank you, Yolanda.
You're welcome. So this is an email, and we received, before I read this one, I'm gonna say, we received a number of emails
Yes. Mhm.
from many citizens who felt very strongly that we should not be taking this property by eminent domain. That the process has been going forward with the board, the planning board for a year, but here's,
And we also received emails from people saying that they wanted us to do something, right?
I don't know that I saw any, maybe one, that,
Okay.
you know, the number that said we shouldn't take it by eminent domain, at least from my email, unless other members got different ones, which is possible.
Okay.
So from Phil Jack, I am writing to you regarding your ongoing discussions of a possible eminent domain taking of 128 Main Street. Due to prior commitment, I cannot attend your November 7th meeting, but I wanted to express my deep disappointment and strong opposition to this possible action, both as the attorney for the Ashland resident proposing to revitalize that property, but also simply as an Ashland resident who is tired of limited town resources being spent on these types of reactionary land purchases. As the attorney for Carlos Hansi, the Ashland resident attempting to revitalize 128 Main Street, I want to make it clear that after spending tens of thousands of dollars and over a year in hearings with the planning board, although it would pain Mr. Hansi and myself to commence litigation against the town, Mr. Hansi will take all necessary legal measures to oppose such a taking, as this is a clear attempt by certain individuals who oppose the project to use any means possible to override the thorough and deliberate decision-making process of the elected members of the planning board, and is a blatant abuse of power. As the board knows, Mr. Hansi's project is based upon Ashland's form-based zoning provisions, which in turn came out of research and hearings conducted by the town on how to best revitalize the downtown. To date, nothing has changed regarding the design and revitalization tenets underlying that zoning. In fact, the town brought in outside consultants last year who reiterated that it is crucial that Ashland add mixed-use buildings just like the one proposed by Mr. Hansey if the town has any hope of revitalization. I also want to note that after reviewing the relevant case law, it is unclear if the town has the authority to take the property through eminent domain, as I don't believe Ashland has adopted a plan with the specificity required regarding this particular property. Thus, a legal dispute would certainly be a long and expensive process, which brings me to my next objection as a town resident. The wasting of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, of town funds to take this property simply because a few individuals with a modicum of authority are not 100% satisfied with the aesthetics of the project. These are funds that could be put to better use, such as on
All right.
public safety and public education.
So, you know,
Thank you.
unfortunately with this letter, he's not writing just as your attorney, but as a citizen
Correct.
with a point of view. And, you know, we've got a lot of these and we're not reading them all.
Okay.
So I think that's,
Thank you for reading
we
along.
probably shouldn't have allowed that. Okay, anything else you want to say?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
just want to clarify, and I think it goes to what Roberta said earlier about slippery slopes. And, you know, for me, there's two slippery slopes here. One is, you know, usurping the authority of another elected board, number one. But number two is the use of eminent domain and how the intent of it. And, you know, just to clarify, you know, what and how and why eminent domain is used, it is a power to be used sparingly by government for projects that are necessary to ensure the health and welfare of its citizens. And the purpose of the eminent domain power is to allow government to undertake public works projects to benefit the town's population. So it's very unclear to me how an eminent domain taking in this particular case qualifies under that definition. I understand in Massachusetts, our laws in reality allow those sorts of events. In many other states, they've restricted the use of eminent domain. We have chosen not to do it at this point. But for me, because we don't like the look of a building, doesn't qualify as a basis, a rationale for eminent domain in this particular case. You know, if somebody can provide that logic and analysis and rationale, I would say, you know, bring it on.
Okay, Yolanda?
So, I remember when it was first brought about that this project was coming forward on 128 Main, that the planning board was looking at it, and if we as a board should get involved. And we had discussions saying, at that point, we didn't think we should, right? It was before the planning board, they had their job to do, they had their work to do, and we were gonna let them do it. We then asked Michael to talk to the developer, see, could we add an affordable housing component? We know that we need affordable housing in our community. But as a developer, he decided not to do that, and we have to respect that. You know, I think about how a couple of years ago, we had asked Michael to start working on our, you know, strategic plan, our, you know, 2030, you know.
It's probably 2040 now.
But the plan, right? And then as a board, we had other priorities that came in place. So we're saying, where is our design and where is our plan for downtown that people want? Well, as a board, we have made decisions to keep pushing that out. And because we've added other things to Michael's plate, that project was not able to be completed. At this point, I think it's something we need to put back on the forefront and back as a priority and ask Michael to complete that, because as was stated, we did our last comprehensive plan in 2003. There was a comprehensive plan committee that tried getting some work done, and that got usurped because of different reasons. And that was under the direction of the planning board, and that was stopped because of different things. So we asked Michael to do it. I'm with Steve in that I am not a believer in using eminent domain because we don't like a building. part of what happens during the planning board process. I remember watching this with the Dunkin' Donuts on Route 126, when it was said, well, it needs to look more like a New England building. We need to have certain kind of landscaping out front. We need to have this, we need to have that. So the planning board is an elected board in our town. As people say about us, if you don't like the work we do as selectmen, you have a choice to not re-elect us at the next time we're up for our term. The same is true with the planning board. If you don't like the work that your planning board is doing when they are up for re-election, by all means, step up, plan on running, and being part of the process. I just don't feel that we as a board, we are the Board of Selectmen. We set policy, we set procedure, we work with our townspeople. We do not try and usurp the work that another board has been working on for over a year. If we were unhappy, we should have gone to the planning board meetings, we should have made our intent known, and we should have said something in public at those planning board meetings. To do it at this late date, after a year of planning, a year of work, I would not support us taking this process by eminent domain.
I thought we did
have
make
to-
comments.
I have to take a step back with respect to that, and I think we have in the past, and I think we did. As a matter of fact, I think I asked Michael to represent our concerns and present them to the planning board, which I know.
Well, and some
which
of
he
them
has
may
done.
have been done at the planning board.
But not to say that our concerns weren't specified. We directed our town manager to do
My
it on our
point at this,
behalf.
my main point at this point is, I do not feel that we as a board have the right to step on the toes
Say the toes.
of our planning board when they've been working on this for a year. If we felt as a board that we should have done something about this, we should not be waiting until now. And to Steve's point, the discussion, just like we have the liaison with school and finance, Steve has been pushing a liaison between selectmen, planning, conservation, and ZBA. This is a perfect example of why something like that is needed, to increase the communications between the boards in this town.
So did you have something you wanted to say about this?
Just in regards to the communication from the Board of Selectmen to the
Sure.
Planning Board, we didn't receive any letter communicating anything from the Board of Selectmen about this project, having issue with it. To my recollection, over 12 months, no Board of Selectmen member spoke against this project publicly during our meetings. That Carl might have, but he did not come representing the Board of Selectmen. He came representing Carl,
Right.
which, right?
So we don't really have a mechanism for us as a board, I don't think, to.
Great, we can have a public discussion and make a statement and
Okay.
send it to the other board.
Sure.
If there was a letter that came from the Board of Selectmen that
So
said,
would that have, what could you have done differently had you received such a letter from us saying, like, there should be less units of housing and more parking, for example, or more setback, or a smaller, lower, what would you have done with that? That you wouldn't
I
have?
mean, it's if we got a letter from the Board of Selectmen saying that, here's some substantial input on this project and challenges that the Board of Selectmen has with that, I mean, I think that would weigh pretty heavily in terms of how we go through the process. I welcome the other members of the board.
Let me just, do you feel you have discretion to actually make changes that you didn't make to this plan?
I mean, I think we attempted to move the project in a direction as best we could, working with the developer over the course of a long period of time. I think we tried very hard to get to the best product, given the aspects of this project, by right use, and I mean, there was a lot of time, money, and effort on behalf of the developer to try to improve the project. It's not as if they didn't work with us.
Okay,
So.
thank you, Joe. Joe, did you have, anybody else want to say anything?
I just, if I get to ask one question. So I know we've talked about the form-based code, but I think like the density and everything is also articulated in some of our overlay districts. I think I'm looking at Preston. And those overlays have been in place for years, I think, ADDA, ADDB, and ADDC. But,
Yeah, I'm not following, Mike. What does that mean?
No, I'm saying this, there was some talk about the form-based code, and I agree. I think the form-based code itself is okay. I think the way, the guidance in terms of interpreting it might need to be. But the size of the project and the density of it, I think, was articulated way before form-based code was part of this whole
Right.
process.
When you say,
And it matches the density, doesn't it, for that area of town?
Yes, and I will say, there's been some talk about plans and lack of plans. There have been plenty of plans, and they have all talked about density and things like that. I think the problem that we have is that those plans have been done in a vacuum, at least from my perspective, and they don't necessarily work to get all the buy-in that they need to. And that's one of the things that we wanted to try to do with the strategic plan, is to get something that was reflective of a diversity of the community. Because I don't think a lot of the town wants to see row houses going down Main Street. Or, maybe that works with Front Street, but not on Main Street. But we don't know.
anyone else? So I'm not, I've asked the developer if he's willing to make any changes. He says, no, we've gone through a long process. Many of us don't like this building. I guess I'm not seeing, at this point, unless someone has a motion to make, I don't see any
I don't think there's a
distinct.
need to make a motion.
Pardon me?
I don't think there's a need to make a motion.
Okay. So, unless there's any further comments, we're gonna go on to the next item. This is, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I gotta
Sure.
make one more. I think we try to think big picture, and I think sometimes we miss the big picture. One of the things we do is we make it difficult for people to come in and do projects here, and as a result, they have to do more density to make up for the development costs. The person who did 21 Main Street, I think there are some people who don't like that building. There are a lot of people that I've talked to that do like that building. It's 3,000 square feet smaller total than what's being proposed at 128 Main. We tried to get that developer to do a project at 128 Main, and to do it something at like a 9-unit structure. With everything that he went through with 21 Main Street, he said, it's not worth it for me. So now we've got.
But doesn't this kind of discussion now, a year into the process, add to that issue?
It does.
Right? They were at the planning board over a year ago.
It does.
And if people were that unhappy, then they should have been at every single planning board meeting talking about this and pushing the developer and pushing the planning board. At this late, this is something, we're talking about economic development, and our economic development director is working her butt off trying to bring businesses into town and developers into town to work proactively with us. They're gonna see this and they're gonna say, what are you guys doing?
Right.
Get your house in order, and then we'll come to Ashland.
Well, I think we've done a lot of economic development work, and this is an anomaly, and every situation is unique, so I would just, yes, Steve.
So just one more comment, and then, hopefully we can move on. So I appreciate all the commentary. I just want to.
Appreciate the input. No, I just appreciate the input.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
Yep.
And just to underscore what Joe was talking about earlier about not receiving any communication from the board or other boards and so on, I think it just goes to the fact that we do operate in silos here. Our boards and committees operate that way, and I think it's imperative that we have this cross-communication and that we get in front of this at an early stage. And I think, we're gonna eventually have an opportunity, or we're gonna have a lot of opportunities downtown, but I'm thinking specifically about, a new public safety building that's gonna free up a really key parcel downtown. So when do we start talking about that? Do we talk about it now, or do we talk about it a year after somebody's proposed a project? So I just want to encourage certainly the planning board, the Board of Selectmen to make this communication loop or make it work.
Yeah.
Well, and just to follow that up, and the citizens, right? As we were discussing the public safety building and whether or not people should support it, the question has already come up. What are you going to do with the fire department, with the fire building and the police station? So that discussion needs to happen now, because as we found out with other properties that we've purchased, we make the decision to purchase them, we put no plan in place as to what we're gonna do with them, because we say, okay, we gotta buy this because of whatever reason, and then no plan is in place to do what what we're gonna do with these properties. And we now see with the Warren Barn that there's issues. We purchased that 2 years ago. So, to your point, Steve, we have to start the discussion now. I mean, maybe wait until November 29th to see if it passes at town meeting. But the discussion has to start happening, and it has to be a continuous discussion. And what I would say to everyone here and everyone watching, help us reach out to as many people as possible. Because there's only 5 of us, and our town manager and our assistant town manager. And we do want to hear from people. We want to have that discussion. But we can't always get to everybody out there. So send us your ideas, come to our meetings. When a meeting gets proposed for something, show up. If you can't show up, send us an email. Because we want you to participate. It's your town as well. It's certainly not just us. It's all of our town. And we all have to participate, and we all have to be proactive as these things come up.
Right. Thank
You know,
you.
we all make a collective decision on the information that's provided us by the majority that's out there that's willing
Right.
to participate.
Well, I think one of the things, we certainly, unfortunately, I thought Ashland had good, planning guidelines in place for downtown. Apparently, that's not the case. And it's unfortunate, because one thing, it's good to have public participation, but I think people can't, I don't think you can have a situation where everybody's gotta watch what the next developer is trying to do and then come to a bunch of meetings to keep something from happening that's bad. I mean, so we need to make sure that we have the right controls in place, that we're putting out the right. I think one of the things, we don't have sufficient safeguards for our downtown and how we want it to look. And I think probably the majority of the people think this is out of place development that's not gonna be good for our downtown.
Did you just say the majority of the
Yes,
people?
that's
How
my
do you
feeling.
make that assessment? if I
Just
could
from
ask?
what I've heard and what.
Well, I've heard the
And you've
opposite.
said, but you
I've
even
heard
said
the
yourself that you didn't like the project, so.
No, what I said, I didn't say that, Rob. What I said I said it was not a perfect project. I
Right,
get
okay.
that. And I've never seen a perfect project. But what I said was, I did not think it was negative or deleterious to downtown.
Okay.
That's what
All
I
right.
phrased.
So I stand corrected. So you're right. That's my impression. I did not take a survey.
And just, in regards to, in regards to the emails, you're saying we got some negative emails. I could go through my emails right now, and I would say 90% of them asked us to not take this property
Sure.
via eminent domain and to allow the project to go forward.
Right, but that's not,
If
again, that's, because people were asked to send emails, which is fine. I think that's a good but that's not necessarily, we don't have a survey, we haven't had a public process, so we don't know.
The
You're right, so it's
planning
not
board
fair
had
to say
but the planning board
majority
had a
of people.
public process, Rob. The planning board had a full year public process about this building.
Sure.
So, I agree, people can't get to every meeting, I understand that, maybe they're not following it all the time, but they had their information out there, it was up on Co-Urbanize, people talked
Sure.
about the fact that it was up on Co-Urbanize, people went to Co-Urbanize and gave their feedback.
Okay,
And
so
some of that
then
was
how did we
used.
end up at this point, though? I guess that would be my question. So we don't have the right kind of, I think there's, I think we've all pretty much said that there's we have some weaknesses here.
Yeah.
Not to belabor the issue, but it gets to a larger one. So what if you don't have a developer that wants to do what you want to do?
Yeah. Well,
Right, which is possible.
Sure, it happens that's why you have zoning and guidelines, and our question is, do we have the proper ones in place? And I kind of thought we did, and, the planning board's indicated if they got some letters from us, they might have changed this, so I didn't realize they had even that much discretion, so I think that's interesting. So we need to give them some guidelines, and if we, if you think this is okay, then we're fine. If you don't think it's okay, and that we've got, potential problem for years to come in downtown, then.
I didn't say it was okay.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying is that there's always these, why can't we get, X or Y into town? Or why can't they do this? And the fact is that unfortunately it's market forces that help
Sure.
determine what happens. Now, what we can do is try to bridge that gap to the best of our ability, but
Okay.
it's tough.
Yeah, all right.
It's tough.
All right, thank you. I
Moving
think
on.
this has been a useful discussion, and thank you all for
all for
coming
coming.
here.
Now
Thank
we
you for
get
your
to the-
input.
now we get to the exciting stuff, right?
Yeah.
Stay, because the next thing is a fun, positive thing.
Uh,
Okay, enough. So the next one is, this is, everybody's here for the
Positive thing.
presentation of the Distinguished Budget Award, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
It's a positive
So,
thing.
I believe, is Brittany still here? Yeah,
Yes,
she's in the
she's
back.
in the back.
So, as the board knows, and I think some of the public knows, one of the things that we've really tried to do is try to create a budget document that serves as a policy, a description of our policies, also gives kind of a sense of the big picture, or the big financial picture, and also communicates clearly information and makes things as transparent as possible. One of the ways you do that, there's certain standards that that you shoot for, and a lot of those are codified in what's known as the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association. It takes a ton of work. You have to put a ton of information in to get that award. And last year was the first year that we were able to be, we were lucky enough to be awarded that, much thanks to the work of Ms. Aya Capone over here. And you have to apply for it every year, and you have to keep on making improvements every year. You have to demonstrate that it's a better policy document, that it's a better communications tool. And I'm pleased to say that this year we were awarded it again for the second straight time. Last year we were one of only 7 Massachusetts municipalities who received it. I think we were the smallest municipality that received it. And this year I think we're probably going to be in the same category. So at this point in time, I'd like to bring Brittany up to the podium and present.
Woohoo.
Unfortunately, the head of the Massachusetts Government Finance Officers Association could not make it tonight, so I am the substitute. So,
Should I take a picture?
Yes.
So anyway, we get this nice, we got this last year, right? So, and then we got our little button this year, 2018, so our second year. We're gonna have these all filled up by the time.
Okay, so we don't need more wall space, because they just give you an extra button.
That's great. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing.
It's, they're finance people, they're efficient.
They're
you know,
efficient.
So, but then they also give a, basically a certificate for the person who is responsible for putting together the budget. And so what it says here is the Certificate of Recognition for Budget Preparation is presented by the Government Finance Officers Association to those individuals who have been instrumental in their government unit achieving a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. The Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, which is the highest award in governmental budgeting, is presented to those government units whose budgets are judged to adhere to the highest program standards. And that's presented by the Executive Director, Christopher Morrill of the GFOA. So, of course, this is presented to Brittany, and I think she deserves a big round of applause for all that she does.
You guys don't know the phone, he can't focus in like I can.
He's an old guy.
Yeah, you're an old
Make sure you
guy.
bring it back. No, go ahead, say something.
Yes.
So I don't want to take all the credit. I want to thank all the department heads and all of their staff for giving me the information that I need to compile the report together. I'm just a lucky one that puts it together.
Great.
So thank you to them.
Thank you.
Well, you put it together well, so
Thank you.
Very impressive, Brittany.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Okay.
Very nice.
I think we do the consent agenda. Is
So moved.
anyone here, Michael? Did any staff here? Okay.
No.
No, not that's part of
All
the
right.
consent agenda. I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented, or should I go a little slower,
Well,
Susan, so
I'll
you can get it
second
put
it,
up?
but I'm gonna wait, so.
Oh, that's
Okay.
right.
You got a motion?
We're getting it up.
Mike, any comments on all these? You're hiring a number of people here, firefighters,
There we go.
recreation program coordinator,
Nope.
Waving.
Nope.
lead mechanic? Nope.
So we have a
Look at
motion
that. Okay.
and a second.
Seconded already? Okay.
All motions been made and second to accept the consent agenda as proposed.
So-
Those
Aye.
in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None?
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, consent
Thank you.
agenda. Thanks.
This has been busy.
Yes.
Good stuff going on.
So the next one is to close and post the special town warrant. Is there, I see a number of, okay. Could I ask, I see some members of the Sustainability Committee out there. We talk about Eversource before we do that? Or, because I think the warrant's gonna take a while, right? Or,
Yeah.
so, Michael, you wanted to give us an update on Eversource, and I'd also sent you a question or two, and then I forwarded some questions from sustainability, which,
Right.
now, did people have a chance to look at those questions? I know you got a lot of stuff over the last week. And, okay, and I do have a copy of them, but I didn't make copies, so.
No,
but
they
go ahead.
were there were a good set of questions. At one of your previous board meetings, you had asked me to file on the board and the town's behalf for what's known as intervenor status with the site review board for this Eversource project. Now, intervenor status gives us the ability to essentially sit at the table when there's discussions about the project and have some input in shaping the project. We can express our concerns. They are taken, I think, weighted a little bit more heavily than just somebody who issues comments. Once you achieve intervenor status, it's demonstrated that you have a very, very substantiated interest into the project. We did file for that status. We were granted that status, so the ruling from the presiding officer was provided to us, and I believe that was forwarded to the board and it's part of your packet. The next step of this is to start putting together, I think, what our concerns are in terms of the proposed route, especially the preferential route that they would like to use. That has a lot of resource impacts, goes through a lot of wetland areas. The secondary or alternative route utilizes streets and is more expensive for them because it's not a linear, straight line, but certainly has less impacts. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, start putting together that, that list. We can start putting it together separately. One thing I think a suggestion that I would make that I think would be beneficial in this case is assign one board member to work with Brian Winter, who is in Attorney Mead's office, who has been kind of the point person on this, to do some of this work and, communicate the board's position and everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I can do that.
I would propose, yes, Rob has, I think, certainly a special affinity for sustainability issues, so I would,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second
I thought
that.
you were gonna say gas.
Gas?
Well,
Well,
Well, I just have one comment / concern. I did look through the questions that we
Sure.
got from our sustainability, and I think
Yeah.
that's all very valid. My comment is this, in that I don't foresee homes being powered by natural gas going away in the next 20 years.
Right.
Sure, we're looking at different ways of generating electricity, which is valid, but in the actual use of natural gas in our homes, I don't see going away in the
Sure.
next 20 years. So
Right.
I think we need to have our discussion with Eversource and understand that, yes, we want them to look at sustainable things for power generation, but they still need to get the gas to our homes. And do we want to work with them to make it as hard as possible for them, or as easy as possible, or find a medium way to do that? And if they're saying that for some safety concerns and for efficiency of getting the gas to our homes, they need to put this pipeline in, I think we need to work with them and not
Sure.
just shut them down completely.
Yeah, no, I
Because
think,
I personally,
Mhm.
I use natural gas in my home,
I think-
and right now, I'm not looking at what else I can do. I've looked at solar, but for me personally, it's not where I'm
Yeah.
going in the next
So
2
let
to
me-
3 years.
I think, let me clarify the questions. I think the questions are, no, that, not that they're opposed to natural gas, but it's more like increasing the capacity and use of natural gas, and is there an alternative? So I think, to me, it really centers around their analysis that they need to increase the capacity of the gas pipeline, and what is behind that. And it may very well be necessary, but I think the questions that you see here are them, making their case that this is the best alternative. That is, you could set up a scenario where they don't have to increase the gas capacity because they're going to increase conservation, so folks aren't gonna need, even though there's growth, they're not gonna need as much gas, or the current gas is sufficient. And so have they done that analysis, or have they looked at alternatives such as increasing the energy efficiency downstream, like this is Framingham, I think. So is there an initiative in Framingham that they could be doing instead, and maybe they wouldn't need to do this? The other question I think is key is the safety aspect. So
Well,
they've never claimed that this will improve safety.
Well, what they've said is the pipe is
Old.
50 years old.
Right.
And right now, it's okay, but how quickly could that change?
Right.
And they're being proactive in regards to giving us a bigger pipe to help with the flow,
With the capacity, yeah.
with the capacity, but also potentially safety, because we don't know.
Right.
Right? It's like with anything, it says, well, your tires are 50,000 mile tires. Well, depending on how you drive, where you drive, and what you accidentally hit, you could have a 20,000 mile tire.
And that's why I've asked them to explain more about the safety and the proposed lifetime of this pipe, because I think that's an important question. Because we're the ones who kind of said, oh, well, it'd be good to replace it, it's old, but they never said that.
No, I agree. I just want us to be,
Right.
I don't want us to just say, no, we're not doing
No,
this.
and we actually
Because there are
can't do
still
that.
many people who
Right.
want
Right.
gas in their
My
homes.
suggestion is that we ask these hard questions, or you've seen the proposed questions,
Mhm.
and then see, and make sure they give us thorough answers so we can comment intelligently. And Michael, did we have a certain deadline? What's our schedule?
I was gonna get the exact, I'm still waiting for the exact
Okay.
schedule. We do need to start putting together those comments soon to file
So
our.
I guess, I don't know if people have had a chance to look at, and, I see Kyle and Matt are back there. I'm not sure we need them to come up or not, but do people kind of think these are the right kind of questions to ask? And then we'll look at the answers?
I think Michael's proposing that we review those, but also submit others that may
Sure.
be of concern to
Okay.
us. So I think that's probably the best route, and,
Yeah, I think at this point,
And
that's the
again,
way to go.
my motion is still valid in terms of appointing Rob to work with council and moving
All right.
moving our concerns and questions forward.
Okay.
And I seconded it.
That, yeah.
All right.
You,
I guess I
you
have
don't
to
have a
c-
problem with that, right?
No, I guess, yeah,
Because I
no,
know the
that's
last
fine.
time we
Despite
did that,
your
you
gas
weren't here,
problems.
so we just wanted to make sure that you're in favor.
Despite the gas. All right,
Okay.
thank you. So the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I
can
think we're all,
we'll
we're set,
stop now.
guys. All right, thank you for coming in. All right. I've lost track of where we are. Okay. So I took that out of order. Is it, well, Steve left, so we'll,
Maybe ask if there's any other agenda items for people that are here, if we wanted to.
yeah, that's a good, I see a number of people out here. Is any other agenda items people especially interested in or are here for? Okay. Anything we want to do while Steve's out of the meeting? Like
What,
pass all
what
sorts-
committee do we want to appoint him
Yeah.
to?
Let's just go back to our regular schedule and.
Well, it's the close and post a special
Yep.
town meeting. All right, so let's do that. And
You ready?
Am I ready?
trying to think if I got, where is it?
Okay. Yeah, So this has been an interesting warrant to put together. So I'll go through the iteration that we have now. Just to clarify the process, tonight the board is going to close and post the warrant. That means the warrant language is pretty much set. There are a few changes that we can make. A lot of the detail that has some movable pieces, I guess you could say, would be located in the motions. And so I think that's important that I want to point out. The FinCom, I believe, is scheduled to meet tomorrow with us to start providing recommendations on these warrant articles. So
Are they expecting them all to be done tomorrow, or?
No.
When are we expecting to get the final FinCom recommendations on these articles and available to the public to read?
I don't know. Yeah, I think. I mean, typically, we don't have the final recommendations until right before town meeting.
Hi, Ryan Turncliffe, 21 Rossi Lane, I guess now speaking as a FinCom member. We do have a meeting tomorrow night. We also have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, the 13th. I'm not sure that we have all of the warrant articles in, so that maybe there's one coming tomorrow to weigh in on. We have a 3-hour meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Sometimes our discussions take a little while. Michael was kind enough to send us the draft warrant ahead of time, so committee members are reviewing that. We'll do the best we can. I would say ideally by the 13th.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I could add some encouragement to have it done by the 13th, so that on the 14th it can go up, so that's then 14 days before town meeting with the Thanksgiving holiday.
I believe that's why we scheduled the 13th.
So if it could be up on, available, and then we can promote that on the town website, that the town meeting warrant is completed and up by the 14th, I think the public would appreciate that.
Got it.
I'm not putting any undue pressure on you.
I'll relay that to the chair.
And so,
The chair right now? Oh, Adam,
Adam.
right, Adam Albert, right.
so just to follow, do we post this draft anywhere? So if people are curious about what we're considering, it's,
Yeah, we'll post it.
all right, so
post
that's
it
a
up
good
as
thing.
part of
Just
the website.
make sure it's marked draft or, whatever.
Okay. So, first one is here report of town manager. Usually it's an update on some of the previous town meeting warrant articles and the implementation of them. Second, free cash allocations. We're still waiting for a free cash to be certified. Again, we will be putting money into the stabilization fund, the OPEB trust. This year we will actually be putting money into the special education, special purpose stabilization account, a capital account, and then also other one-time expenses. Following that, we have the creation of the Stormwater Enterprise Fund and the appropriation of funds. Again, if we could, again, we've talked about using free cash this year as a way to bridge us into the following year before any fees go into effect.
Excuse me one sec before, I don't want to jump ahead. I'm assuming we are having another meeting prior to special town meeting so that we assign,
Yeah.
once we have a final warrant.
Let's
we
make
will
sure, let's
sign.
try to schedule
Talk
that.
Yeah, at the end we have to
All
set a
right,
date.
that's fine.
So, next, we have the property tax exemption. Again, we will be looking at keeping it at the same amount as we did last year. So then we start getting into articles that are, have more of a theme, and even though they're separate articles, they are kind of bundled together. So
Okay.
first is approve the tax agreement for the solar project that's being done by Citizens Energy up on the cap. Again, that's, we're looking at $1.2 million over a 20-year period. Again, these tax agreements are things that you do just so you can secure some payment while, I think a lot of people are, there's a lot of disagreement as to whether solar projects are actually taxable. This kind of mitigates all of that.
Very good.
Question for you.
Yeah.
You said 20 years. This is 25. Are we
It says
up to?
up
Okay.
to 25
All right,
years.
Okay.
So next is a rather large one, which we will talk about later. That's the approval of the purchase or taking of land at the Rail Transit District. Would you like me to go ahead and get into the details of that now, or?
I would would say let's do it, I personally think we should do it separately
Okay.
from this discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can get through this and vote to approve it.
All right. So we did talk about taking it by eminent domain. It looks like we might have an agreement in place to purchase it. The next bundle of items, warrant articles, are really dedicated to the public safety building. First is approving the gift of land for the public safety building. As you see here, I have changed it from the 4-acre parcel that Mr. Fafford had originally agreed to donate. He has now agreed to donate the full parcel, which is 11.55 acres. So we have made that change accordingly. Amending the zoning bylaw at the Wildwood Mixed Use District. Originally, when we were looking at the 4-acre parcel, we just needed something for 24-hour municipal use. Since we have expanded it to include the whole parcel, one of the ideas that has been presented is maybe using part of that land for the expansion of Wildwood Cemetery. And so you'll see that we've made a change also here to allow municipal use and municipal cemetery use.
Knowing how that's laid out, how would that work?
You would probably have to terrace it at, because the cemetery is up top
Yeah.
here and then you have the land on the bottom. You'd probably have to terrace it to a certain extent.
Oh.
We
Or
actually have
give
a
access
we have
from
a-
from West Union, right, or East, or Union?
The point is that we have the flexibility to do something
We can
there.
actually do it through the
Um,
cemetery
okay.
itself.
Yeah. I think we did zone it to where you can't run a bike trail through it, Rob. I think that's
Better
proposed
not
here.
have.
So,
But
yeah, so the next one, we do have municipal use there. A bond authorization for public safety building is the next article. Again, we were successful in the vote last night. This appropriates those funds. You will see in the motion that it will have $3.5 million. So next is one, and Ryan, I believe this is one the FinCom does not have yet. This is actually a CPA article voting to appropriate $250,000 to the Ashland Affordable Housing Trust Group. And that is for the acquisition of real property or the affordability restrictions for a parcel within the downtown area.
Right,
So,
within ABB.
exactly, within one of the zoning
Right.
districts. Next two articles are related to the Riverwalk project. It's accepting the easement from the Kennedys at 24 Sudbury Road. That is something that Jen has worked really, really hard on negotiating this agreement with them. As part of that, we will actually be transferring property from the town to them as part of this agreement, and that is reflected in the next article. Next is approving the purchase of land off of Oregon Road. This is actually, it's off of Lincoln, although the physical address actually says it's off of Oregon Road. So again, that's part of the town forest, or that will be part of the town forest. Next is the MWRA bond for I&I work. This is something that's done every 2 years. We're in phase 10 now. This helps us identify and detect and then take care of infiltration and inflow going into our sewer system. Next is the acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 58, which allows us to basically any agreements that we have that are not lived up to, it gives us the ability to put a lien on the property in the amount associated with that charge. This protects us in things like development agreements and things
Did
of
we
that
not
nature.
have this, or did we not have it in detail enough?
We did not have it. If you remember, like a good example of this is the road overage with the MBTA access
Yeah.
road. We had the ability to put some enforcement mechanism in that because at the time the applicant was looking for a permit from us. And so we had the ability to deny the permit. We did not have the ability to attach a lien onto the property.
And this affords that now.
This changes that.
Okay.
have we seen this, is this the first time we've seen this, or you've had this in the warrant before?
No, that's,
Okay.
it's been in there.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Next is the collection of municipal charges. It basically lays out a process on how the collector, treasurer collector, will issue this notice to the licensing authorities. Next is the acceptance and accepting statute and amending Chapter 178 of the Town of Ashland bylaws. That is to do fingerprint-based background checks for certain occupations.
Is this contingent on the
How big this is.
vendor application form?
Correct.
Related to the ice cream
Right,
truck
right, the ice cream
bylaw.
truck, right, okay. Because it doesn't say that, that's why I was wondering if it was the same one.
This is one of those, it's 3 pages long.
Yeah.
In the warrant. So next, we're actually gonna try.
Well, so can we get a summary of this, of the bylaw, or any kind of,
That's a good point.
Jen,
Right.
I'll turn it over to you.
I mean, not right now, but I mean, you know, people are gonna look at this and they're gonna
Yeah,
get
what-
glassy-eyed, cause it's 3, you know, it's a lot of pages, and I would think that there's some kind of summary,
thoroughly
right? I mean, it's
yeah.
clearly those 3, you know, we're doing this because of the 3 things, the 3 occupations, right? So, okay.
You
But we can
don't
definitely get a
enjoy reading
summary,
this?
and it may be just adding that. I think
I
that-
enjoyed reading it, but I wanna help our public understand and be willing to participate.
Not have to go through what we had to do. Make it easier. for
Anyway,
them.
yeah,
Crib
we can get a
notes.
Oh, that's
summary.
a good idea.
So, the next article.
Cliff notes.
There you go.
And with the encouragement of our town moderator, in an effort to try to streamline town meeting and make it efficient, we are looking at doing these road and open space acceptances as a consent item, typically to what we do now with some of the other items at annual town meeting.
Okay.
So we will make the changes reflected tonight and on the
Okay.
Royal Colony Drive, and so that will be part of the documentation.
I always feel better when Doug makes his determination and makes the comments on town meeting floor, because they're the ones that have to maintain them.
Doug,
You know,
yeah, and
so-
Doug's good at
checked
that.
it out.
Right, and I go on his recommendation, because they're out there, they're the ones gonna have to take care of it, so.
Absolutely. And then this is the final one, isn't it? Okay, wow. We've been able
Really?
to, yeah.
Mixed
and-
use?
See that we're- Okay.
So this is actually amending the zoning bylaw at the Wildwood Mixed Use District. This is, I think you refer to it, Joe, typically as Phase 8 of the Village of Americas
Phase 8.
parcel. So currently, what they are allowed to do, or what they are going to do, is 4 mid-rise structures next to Chestnut Street. It's 200 units of housing with some commercial space on the bottom. This proposed zoning change would actually eliminate the mid-rise and the residential or the commercial components in the mid-rise buildings. And then it actually creates, basically, you would have a townhome configuration of a maximum of, I believe it's 60 units? Is it 60 or 72? 72 units. So dropping down from 200 units to 72 units. And then it also creates a courtyard, essentially, in the middle, a big swath of open space. And
Who came up with that idea?
I don't know, Joe, some brilliant guy. But so this is, it talks about buffering and landscaping and the buffer zone. And this would all have to go through the planning board as well. Planning board is going to be actually having a meeting with the Village of America's community, I believe, on the 14th, just to talk about this and get their
Oh,
feedback
good for
on
them.
it.
I was gonna ask, why are we sponsoring it?
Because the planning board has not had an opportunity to sponsor it.
But they will?
Yes.
Presumably. And might be a good idea to have some kind of plan or diagram so people can see what this is.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought it was actually gonna say town manager on there, because I wouldn't necessarily wanna put,
Okay.
put that in front of you.
But
What the
again,
Board of
for the
Selectmen.
people looking at this, there should be a plan as to what part of that
Agreed.
development this affects.
Great.
Yeah, I mean,
And what we're
kinda-
changing,
yeah.
and,
Just to help people understand.
We have an understanding what it is, but other people would not.
And basically, what is it?
Makes sense.
I was trying to it's to get rid of the commercial and increase the the residential, right? And it was.
No, it eliminates the commercial, it decreases the residential from 200 units to a maximum of 72 units.
Oh, I didn't
And
see that.
create, instead of building on the whole thing, it creates basically a courtyard. There's 27,000 square feet of open space, contiguous open space as
Yeah.
part of the courtyard.
There should be, there should be a summary like that. I
And
would
do we
suggest.
know?
We'll have of course we'll have a plan.
What the
and all
total
that stuff.
count of units will be, once we add this 72, how many units will be?
In that area, it will not exceed 392 in that area.
In that area, which is a
Full-
large.
So the
Area
whole,
A is
so the
pretty
whole
large.
map, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're talking about the buildings that are already
already there.
pre-existing, right?
Yeah, all the housing that's already there.
Yep. So, and then it also that courtyard also connects what's currently been built to the street, so, in the sidewalk, so you have that continuity.
The only thing, and I haven't seen what you guys looked at, but, it's important to have some kind of, I think, pedestrian trail from that development into the high school, and around the development too. And hopefully someone's looking at that.
That would be kind of difficult because you're gonna be encroaching either on cemetery or private property, which
In
abuts
the
up to the
back corner, they
area.
go right up against, What's that?
There is one currently?
that's right, yeah.
Right.
Or, you could also go to the right though, and be right in that area above the
Softball field.
to the right, but way to the right as you look at it. So, I'm just saying, the kids are doing it now, if we're kind of designing things there, we should look at that. Rather than have it kind of disorganized, Okay. All right, anything else on the warrant, Mike or Jen?
Thanks, Ryan.
We all set
it.
with the warrant? Okay. Oh, so we
We have to vote and approve to close it and post it.
Do we have one more
One more what?
article to discuss? Warrant article? We're not gonna discuss that now?
Well, I think you're talking about the RTD.
The
purchase.
detail of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were gonna talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Later.
so,
Oh, later.
so it's not gonna
Okay.
change
Because we
the
know it's gonna
warrant.
be on here, but it's
Right.
not gonna change this specific,
that's true.
So we
separate.
could,
That's true. Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
we can
Alright.
do that. So, do
I
have a motion?
move that we close and post the special town meeting warrant as presented.
Second.
Motion to close the warrant has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None? Okay.
And with
Motion
strong
passes.
encouragement to the finance committee to have their recommendations available to the public by November 14th.
Aren't you glad you're here, Ryan?
They're-
Get that.
They do a very diligent.
I
they're
know
very
they do.
diligent.
Very
I
thorough,
just-
very diligent.
This,
And we
the
appreciate all your
sooner,
effort.
the thing is, the sooner we can get it to the citizens, the sooner they can look at it, understand it, and ask questions.
Correct.
All right. Warren Wood's transfer of 1 acre to Conservation Commission. We've talked about this, and we talked about doing it after the properties meeting.
I had asked through, I guess I didn't ask you directly, Rob, that someone from the Conservation Commission come before us and talk about this and sort of present
Yeah.
what their plan is for the 1 acre, how they're gonna incorporate it into what's going on there.
Oh. Okay.
I don't remember that. I mean, do people think that should keep us from doing this? I think,
I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. I know that, I think the Board of Selectmen wanted to know the Conservation Commission's opinion, like their position on it, like their, as a board.
yeah,
And they did vote to support
yeah,
the transfer.
right, yeah.
I don't have that exactly in
I
front
wouldn't
of
have
me.
expected anything different. I believe I had asked you if the chair of the Conservation Commission could come before us and talk about this. Just like if we're doing something with other boards, we ask them to come before us and talk about it.
Did we just have a discussion not too long ago, like maybe 20 minutes ago, that with the lack of communication between
Yep.
committees, and this is a prime example.
Really? Why do you say that?
Well, because I believe that, I don't have a problem with the transfer, but I would like to hear it from them as well. Why they think it was necessary to do that when originally when we discussed it and it was voted upon, that envelope would remain there, and, because things have changed. and I think Yolanda will agree, things have changed over the last year or so with respect to what we wanted to do and maybe the potential of putting another structure on that unit, on that property. I don't know if that's still something that we're looking at to do.
Are we? I thought we were.
Like a barn.
I thought we were done with all that, but.
Well, no, that's why we left that particular area under
And we
our
didn't
control.
finish we had a conversation at our meeting about what we wanna do for that area, but it wasn't finalized, so. I personally am not ready to vote on this. I apologize, I guess I should have emailed you and let you know that beforehand. I've had a bit,
Sure.
I didn't think to do that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
I thought the chair might have been, of the Conservation Commission, was gonna be here to talk to us about it.
Michael, did you say they sent us something? I thought I'd heard something that they were in favor of it,
They
or?
did vote 5-0-1 with Carl abstaining to recommend that. I'm just trying to go to the minutes to find the exact language. I mean, I don't remember the request of the chair. I know there was a request to hold off until the October 18th
I
form.
thought that's what we had decided. I think it's, of course, it wouldn't hurt to have the chair or somebody come in and talk about the purposes. I'm prepared to transfer it because we've talked about it, but I don't, Steve.
Well, I stated at the prior meeting when we discussed this that I was certainly in favor of this transfer, but, understand, some additional conversation. So I'm still in favor of transferring it, but, I don't disagree with Yolanda. I think ultimately we're going to, in my mind, relative to, our portfolio of projects, for me, the reason to postpone it earlier was to get some feedback from the public forum. I was away at that time. I don't know if we did or did not receive any input in terms of, specifics.
I don't think it ever
But
came up. Yeah.
regardless, I mean, I think there's still, it's not unreasonable to expect to have the chair come and speak to it. Again, I'm in favor of it. And I suspect it's gonna get transferred at some point, and,
All
whether
right,
it's
so
today or.
I'm sensing that people, at least half or maybe more of the committee wants. So we should invite him, and I would say, but if Gene's not available at our next meeting, he can send us a written communication about the plans.
So here's my question, and I mentioned this the first time this was brought up, is I'm not understanding what the urgency is all of a sudden for this one particular acre. I understand that it's been suggested that because it's under the care and custody of the selectmen, but the selectmen haven't been maintaining it. The Conservation Commission has, but they've been maintaining it all this time. So, if Gene can't come to our next meeting, then it gets pushed. I'm not understanding the urgency of taking this 1 acre
Well, I
and
think
moving
it's
it from the care and custody of the selectmen.
It's not
None of us
urgent.
are going anywhere in the next couple of months, right? That are sitting here right now. None of us are going.
Sure, I suppose.
Okay, unless something happens, okay, granted. But still, let's finish the conversation about the area, let's have that conversation with the conservation chair, and then take the vote. That's all. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it to Michael.
But I think that, I agree with Yolanda, just that discussion. I don't think that we have, I think there are more pressing issues that are facing us right now than.
Well, there's always issues. I mean, it's just.
Well, I know, it's just.
We scheduled something, we should just do it at some point.
If Gene can't come to our next meeting, then we
All right.
go to the meeting after that. If we can't come
Okay,
then,
I mean, I was just thinking,
then it's January.
if we're asking him for plans, he could send it. Okay, so we'll invite him to our next meeting, or a meeting, to
Right.
talk to us about this.
10 minutes max.
Yeah, it's not gonna need to be a long discussion, but
Sure.
an understanding.
Okay. Community compact round?
Sure. All right, thank you. So everybody, I think, at the table is familiar with the Community Compact Program, and I let you know a couple of months ago that, the latest round had opened up. And, based on the conversation that we had, it sounded like the board really wanted to do things related to the aging population, you know, not necessarily dementia-friendly, even though that is an option, but do like a baseline assessment. And then climate change adaptation and resilience, so like getting a, you know, risk assessment. And then also, we kind of left it at that, but then there was also another one that I found, which is sustainable development and land protection. And there's a number there. One's complete a master or an open space recreation plan to guide land conservation and development decisions,
Roberta just left.
including zoning and land acquisition. I was thinking
The
of it
open
more from a
space
master
plan.
planning perspective.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if you're, you know, okay with moving forward, I could, you know, prepare an application and
Yeah,
let you.
definitely.
Is it all three of those, or we pick one, or we need to?
No, I think we should do three.
Apply for all three and see what we
Oh,
get.
All right,
What,
that's
what we
all
wanted to
sounds
make
good.
sure is that it was consistent with some of the things that we're doing.
Sure,
Yeah.
they all sound good.
Yeah, and I think the aging one particularly, I think resonates,
And the master
time.
planning
you know,
one,
with,
certainly.
you know, specifically with some of the
Especially after
projects and
tonight.
initiatives going on, so that's good.
Yeah. All right.
Good stuff.
All right, so now the purchase of the rail transit district.
All right. I'm surprised Roberta left for that. I figured she'd watch that one.
I get-
Okay. All right. So there's been a lot of activity, I think, related to the rail transit district over the last 3 years. As most everybody in the audience knows and in town knows, there was a 398 unit development, Cirrus Apartments, that was built in 2016 and 2017, and they've just, you know, started wrapping those things up. That was on about 26 acres, okay? 26 acres out of the entire rail transit district. That leaves about 150 acres total that is, you know, currently not being used and is zoned to be developed in certain ways. Mostly it's townhomes. There's a certain level of residential, or different types of residential and commercial. And then there's the cap itself. So we have talked about acquiring the rail transit district because it's the largest piece of developable land here in town. It's got the potential to be a game changer, either for the good of the town or for, dare I say it, the bad of the town. And so I think that we owe it to ourselves to get this done right, not just get it done. The zoning that's currently in place was passed in 2000. The town has changed dramatically since that time. We have different needs. We have different things that we want as a community. And I think what goes there needs to reflect that. Knowing that, we talked about it earlier tonight. So what we want is not always what the landowner or a developer wants to do. And, you know, we can't always force compliance with that. What we have to do is we have to look at, you know, shaping it and controlling it in the ways that we can. So we did look at trying to acquire that property through an arm's length transaction. That looked like it was, we did have an agreement for that. That agreement I'll be charitable here, for a number of reasons, did not get consummated. So we then turned and looked at the major step of eminent domain. And we talked about eminent domain earlier tonight and the fact that you need to have a plan. And we were talking about a 4-pronged approach and a 4-step plan for this. One is affordable housing for our seniors, okay? Seniors that are currently in town. 2 is commercial property, having a commercial development that's more in line with the things that we're talking about. 3rd is bringing the YMCA into town, thinking of that as a recreational amenity for the community, as well as a community resource and an economic development tool, because it would be a regional facility. And then finally, keeping a lot of the spaces open space and using it for recreational amenities, specifically the Upper Charles Trail, because the plan has it going right through there.
Yeah, and I think, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think there's very much a distinguishing characteristics between looking at eminent domain in that purpose for that property versus, in the situation that we were discussing earlier.
Exactly. So, what, again, we were looking at doing this by eminent domain. I know the board has expressed some interest to continue that route on some, if not all, of the entire parcel. But the alternative that I would propose is basically a three-pronged approach, one of which we have direct control over. Think of it as a three-legged stool, if you will. So the first one relates to the affordable housing for seniors. So the landowner has an interested developer who is willing to do, instead of 252 townhomes across the 38 acres of Lot 2, is willing to do 150 units, or up to 180 units of apartments on a smaller footprint, which is 12 acres. They would be 62 plus, 25% of them would be affordable, which means we would be able to count all of those units towards our affordable housing inventory. That in turn would give us protection from 40B applications for 2 years and would increase our affordable housing stock by 2.5%, essentially increases it by 50%. As part of that agreement, the town would need to have a development agreement with this developer. As part of that, the developer has agreed in principle, and again, all of this has to be discussed and consummated, has agreed in principle to give back 20 to 24 acres of the 38 acres back to the town, deed it back to the town as open space. The second, that's the first leg of the stool. Second is the landowner has agreed to donate 10 acres of land on Lot 3, which is on the eastern side of the MBTA access road, to the Metro West YMCA for the purposes of building a regional facility that would service primarily the towns of Ashland, Holliston, and Hopkinton. As part of this, the Metro West YMCA has actually voted and determined that this site would be the best location. It was really between this site and a site in Hopkinton. And so it looks like that can go forward as well. What that leaves is about 80 acres left. And I should also back up a little bit. The cap, there is a proposal, like I said, Citizens Energy is going to do a solar array on that cap, and then part of the land outside the cap. Again, it leaves about 80 acres to be purchased. We have negotiated a purchase price with the landowner of $4.8 million for the remaining 80 acres. The landowner, upon the sale of Lot 2, would pay the town $405,000, which would represent his back payment for the overages of the MBTA access road. So all of the, even though the town is only really is only purchasing this one piece, it's really all contingent on everything going forward. I don't think the town would be, as you've indicated, the town wouldn't be interested, or you wouldn't be interested in putting this forward to the town if it, at this price, if the 24 acres is not guaranteed, or if the YMCA is not guaranteed of getting that parcel. So I think now the process is just putting together the agreement that puts those protections in place for the town. How do we pay for this? So first is there's the $1.2 million from the solar deal, which I think would be a perfect way to help finance this. You know, think about it from a master planning perspective. And then Senate President Spilka, who has already done a tremendous amount for the town, has also recently inserted $3 million in the economic development bond bill for this project. So that would take care of the majority of the purchase price. The rest we would handle under the levy. So again, we would be getting, just to summarize, we'd be getting what's there right now, or what is currently allowed there right now, is up to, I believe it's 500 units of housing, 252 townhomes, a little bit of commercial, What we would be doing is getting 150 units of senior affordable housing, or 25% affordable, such that all 150 units could go towards the subsidized housing inventory. We'd be getting some commercial space, we'd be getting the YMCA, and we'd be getting acres and acres of open space as well.
And the ability to control,
And the ability to control what happens.
which is what our townspeople have been asking us to do for that parcel.
Exactly. And this would be a two-stage thing. So we would be looking at the purchase of the property at the fall town meeting. To do the apartments as opposed to the sprawling townhome development, it would need a zoning change as well. So we would be looking at a special town meeting early next calendar year.
So with the monies that we anticipate to get and hopefully get through the state with the $3 million economic development bond, add that to the 1.2, we're looking at, what, 600,000 for the remaining balance?
Well, after you net out the 400, get
Oh,
the
forgot about
400,
400, so
it's
it's
200. Yeah.
200, yeah, okay. Enough that for 88.
So, but the pilots from citizens are over a 20-year period.
Correct.
So you would be bonding this, a portion of this over 20 years.
Right, the
to
financing
match
would be
that.
over a 20-year period.
So that would be, so just so folks understand, if you netted out the $3 million, the balance will be bonded, partially paid for by the pilot, and then the rest through the levy.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, just if I may, there's,
Just real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh.
So
Motion to
moved.
go
Motion
past
to vote
10.
Past 10 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay. We would also be looking at getting tax revenue from the senior development. No kids, so we've seen from our financial models that those are the developments that typically.
Yeah, if you have time, it'd probably be
Yes,
good to
yeah.
do that before town meeting if you can.
Yeah.
So the other thing I do want to mention is this is now a perfect opportunity for us to get together with the planning board.
Yep.
And be on the same, have the same information, have the same discussion, and really start that process.
Yep.
Right.
About the senior housing?
No,
The whole
about
thing?
communication
thing,
as
yeah.
Communication
boards.
aspect of it.
Oh, but I thought you were talking about this project.
I am. This is a perfect project for us to start that process
Well, the only
of
reason I'm-
communication.
Sure. The only thing I'd say, we do need to think about kind of a larger process, though, about the rest of the site, because we'll have this
I'm
huge
not,
site.
yeah, I'm just saying, all I'm suggesting
I
is that
getcha.
we start to talk together, that's
Sure, very good.
It's like a that's like a committee tech review.
a commune.
Commune, yeah.
Commune, there you go. I see Ryan's up at the,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had a quick, could you clarify the text that's in the warrant article that covers this for those that might see the warrant article in the future? I think you mentioned an 80-acre parcel or some combination of parcels, and
which number is
folks
it?
that may or may not be privy to the current draft may seek some clarification on your comments tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
is it, which one is it? Is that the question?
Top of
So-
page 2.
Yep. So what this says right now is to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to purchase, acquire, or take by eminent domain, and to raise and appropriate, either by appropriation, borrowing, or otherwise, a sum of money to fund said purchase or taking, along with all associated legal and engineering costs necessary. The property or any part thereof located in Ashland, Massachusetts, identified on Lot 2A containing 37.99 acres of land, shown on a plan entitled, et cetera, and Lot 3 containing 123.2227 acres on the plan entitled Plan of Land in Ashland, Massachusetts. Gives the book and page, copies of which are on file in the town clerk's office. The acquisition of said land having been determined to be necessary for the health and welfare of the inhabitants of Ashland and to be used for recreational use, affordable housing, and economic development, to be under the care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen. Is that helpful?
It's an old name, JP.
Sorry, I guess my specific question was if those parcels add up to significantly more than 80 acres, and there were some maybe donations. So I was just trying to understand if the town was acquiring the property in full and then making the donations, or if the build. So maybe just some clarity around what the town actually owns at the end of this in terms of acreage.
We would
I don't
definitely.
know that it's clear.
What we definitely talked about was having kind of a site, like
A
an
site plan
overhead,
as to
and
what
basically
the
said,
80
this is
acres
what
would
this
cover.
is gonna be, this is what this is gonna
Yeah.
be, and then
That's great.
this
Thank
is
you.
what the remaining.
Yeah, we've
is.
already,
Okay.
as we were looking at stuff, we're like, yeah,
It
we
just
gotta-
sounded pretty
if
confusing
it was
as you were
confusing to
discussing
us
it, and it doesn't make sense
we're
in
aware,
there.
so yeah, we're, yeah, definitely a map as to what.
Come prepared tomorrow night, Michael.
I will, I will.
So is that good with the rail transit district?
I think that
Yeah.
works for me.
Thanks, good, thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, so budget instructions?
Yes,
It's November, aren't we a little
it
late?
no, actually, we're in pretty good shape. Brittany's running the show.
Okay.
So.
We didn't get anything in our packet, right?
No, I do have,
Okay.
I do have
Yeah,
copies
just-
here of the.
He handed this out.
Not my packet.
It was at the,
Yeah, he handed it out.
like, literally right before,
While we were sitting
right
there,
before
yeah.
the meeting, the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The calendar.
Oh, I'm getting one.
So that has
It's 2
been,
pages.
Is it 2 pages?
yep, so,
I can over.
wow, okay. So we're still on time. As you know, the FinCom gets the version of their budget, in, I think, the beginning of January is usually. I'll have to find it later, Joe. I'm
That's
sorry.
all right. I'll just share.
You'll just share. And I think it pretty much lays it all out for you. We'll put the instructions in the calendar up online under the FY20 budget information. It's hard to believe we're at FY20. So I just wanted to notify you of that and let you know that.
So FinCom has issued their statement with you?
FinCom issued the statement.
And what is our plan for the budget process? Are we looking similar to what we've done other years in regards to, okay.
Yeah, last year was really, it moved right on time, I think. I think we're gonna change, we changed a few things, we're gonna change a couple of things this year in terms of FinCom involvement and hearings and things of that nature. And that's reflected in the calendar, but we had the budget done, I believe, 2 months before, like the numbers done, not the document, like 2 months before.
Right. Okay.
Long ago, do you
And
remember
that-
when we were having it like the day before?
And was that just the town side, or was that both school and town?
Both. It's both, yeah.
Okay.
So, it's nice to have that laid out, and Brittany runs a pretty tight ship. I know they're starting on the capital plan, next week.
Next week.
So, didn't get much submissions this year, did we?
No, we shouldn't have though, so they were just reprioritized and then added new items.
I just want to say one thing. I know things are running smooth when the liaison committee hasn't had an opportunity to meet.
Yeah.
Because everything is running smoothly.
Interesting.
That says a lot. That says.
Might be good to
Well,
group
well,
now that
They
the.
still wanna meet.
But it's still, it's, there's no questions or.
Usually when we would meet, it would be long meetings.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. It's.
Well, and I also think there's more discussion on the general government and the town side these days. It's not like you and Jim are going months without discussing
Right.
what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a regular discussion.
And I think having those policies in place,
Yeah,
you know,
have been
certainly
helpful.
smooth the
Absolutely.
waters out, so I think that was a huge step forward
Yeah,
for the town
absolutely.
and just for our relationships as boards and committees, so I think, yeah, that's, just
Just
took all
unfortunately,
the,
we
all
dropped the
the
ball by not doing it with
angst
other
out
boards.
of, yeah.
Well, I will have to say, just to that point, I think several of the first texts that I got last night from people after the vote was announced were from school committee members and the superintendent, and,
Well, they're
just-
very supportive of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's positive for everybody.
So next, the House Street Solar update. I believe those of you were invited. Tomorrow, we will be cutting the ribbon on the House Street landfill solar project. It's been operational for a little while, but there's some things that we've been working out. And so we're excited about that. This is the third of our 3 solar projects that we've done with Amoresco. So I hope people can make it. Rob, I believe you're going to be there to say a few words. And we're still finalizing things, but we might, with this coming online, we might actually have a situation where we don't have any electricity bill on the municipal side.
Well, that's great.
So between
That's
the
incredible.
projects, the things that we're doing, and that includes things like street lights and stuff like
Oh,
that.
wonderful.
So
Congratulations.
that would be a huge win.
And so, and if you think about this, with the combining of two buildings down the road, that'll be another cost
Well, that
savings to
was-
the town.
Yeah.
So that adds on to that too, so to have the extra.
Do you folks get the Sustainability Committee newsletter? I'd never seen it. I got one, it's really
No, I've
well
never
written.
seen it, no.
And, but the interesting thing was, that's exactly what they talked about, the new public safety building,
Who do
really.
they send it to?
I don't know, I'm gonna ask, I think we should ask, cause it looked good,
It
I was
should
like,
be if
no,
it's-
we should get it at
So it's
least, right?
the sustainability
That's my
committee that we
understand-
appointed?
I think so,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so-
And
So
all
we
I have to
should-
do is send it to Board of Selectmen and we
Yeah.
all get it.
We all get it,
Point.
right.
And it should be posted.
Should be
Yeah.
on,
Posted
should be
on
on
the
the
website.
website,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm understanding what I got, but I thought it was a newsletter from the state, so yes, I will
Oh, the
follow
state
it.
newsletter,
forward
yeah,
it to
I
us?
No,
did
no,
get-
no,
Our
yes, I can,
Sustainability
yeah.
Committee.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
Yeah,
if you would.
it was
so-
about the, you know.
That's great. They, it's, I get an online newsletter from Wellesley's Sustainability Committee,
Mhm.
and it's really, really well done. So
Yeah.
if they've taken some,
Yeah.
measures from that,
I'll look
yeah.
at
We should invite them to one of our meetings
There
to
you
talk
go.
about where they're at with stuff.
Yeah.
And then they can promote the
And they're
newsletter if
happy
they're
to
actually
come,
doing it
right,
on a
right.
monthly basis.
If you recall, they were here, how long ago? 3 months?
2?
No, I
Two?
think
All
it
right,
was
so it was
2 months, yeah.
relatively recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they'd be happy to
We
come,
were there.
you know, if they have time.
But it was on it wasn't just a general, oh yeah, it was,
Yeah, it
never
was,
mind,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
It's been a long couple months.
Getting
A lot of
tired?
months, a lot of months,
So that
a lot of
recent,
meetings.
was that recent? It was just 2 months ago, okay.
Mhm.
All right,
Um,
yes, that's great. It's gonna start at 9:30 and it's gonna be relatively 10
Depends
o'clock?
upon how long
Well,
you talk.
I'm gonna talk.
if you and I are
I'm
talking,
gonna
Rob.
talk 35 minutes, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'll be missing this one.
Yeah.
So,
I can't miss it, it's right around the corner.
There you go.
How do I miss that?
Okay.
We had another
But it's gonna
meeting.
be relatively quick.
I will have to say, so there still needs to be some work around the vegetation, but you can see the concept. And,
Right.
as much of a heart attack as it gave me, I think the planning board did a really good job of making a good project out of this in terms of the buffering and stuff. So it was really good.
Great.
So.
Okay. Thanks.
Next, Community Rails Coalition. So I've been asked to be a part of the Commuter Rail Communities Coalition. It's a partnership with MAPC and the 495 Metro West Partnership and a group called Transportation for Massachusetts. Yolanda, your friend Josh, I believe is a
Oh,
big
Josh
wig
is still
there.
doing that. I bet.
It's actually the managers and administrators from communities that have commuter rail lines, and it's
We had a
really
big meeting last week in Framingham, right? Was sort of the
it's
kickoff.
in October, and
October,
it
okay.
was October 25th, I believe it was, but
Craziness.
it's really designed to be a group that's going to help advocate on a number of levels. So support and advocate for what they call first and last mile connections to commuter rails, how municipalities can form partnerships with the MBTA, sharing best practices for equitable transit-oriented development, so things of that nature. I can send this out to you, but I'll give you an update on that.
Sure.
There's a lot of enthusiasm around this group, so.
Good.
Yeah, MAPC is really working on it because they're doing a lot with transportation and apparently Framingham's gonna be getting some bikes,
That'd be interesting to see how that works.
Glad that
Mike
they're-
blue
actually
bikes.
glad that they're
brought
doing
that up a
something.
couple months ago, and I kinda said,
Oh, the Lime
maybe.
bikes?
The Lime
Lime
bikes,
bikes.
so
Yeah.
we'll see how it works
Yeah,
for them.
Framingham is getting them.
Are they?
Yep.
So don't be surprised if scooters are the next initiative
Yeah,
in
that's a big
the
one.
area, because I'm not sure how Massachusetts will handle it, but having just been in Austin, there are scooters everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And they've kind of taken over the city, and It's interesting. Be interesting to see how Massachusetts
Well,
drivers deal
MA
with scooters.
MAPC is in the process of trying to look at either legislation or how they can work, how they can help the communities bring it together, because have already shown up in, I think, Somerville and Cambridge.
Well, that's interesting, because about 15 years ago, there was a big push with scooters. And you'd see a lot of them on the side of the road. So the registry had to come up with certain restrictions, because there weren't any. So they had to follow the same rules of the road, this and that and everything else, but.
Well, this is, just observation.
The equipment as well.
Yeah, I will tell you, in Austin, they're all over the place, and, the system works pretty neatly. You just, wherever it is, you flash a credit card, you use it as long as you need it, and you just leave it wherever you leave it, and it just kind of rotates through the city. Now, the problem is they don't have any significant regulations on scooters at this point. And so they're on bicycle trails, they're on the streets, they're on the sidewalks, they're going in opposite directions of pedestrians, traffic, bicyclists. So it's kind of chaotic. Again, knowing what we know about Massachusetts and, our road conditions and
Right.
our drivers and so on, this is gonna be an interesting phenomenon.
Was there an age restriction?
I'm not aware of it, but, it seemed like they were from 10 to
Did you say
to
60?
80.
Yeah, 60.
60. But, one thing I read about in Massachusetts, apparently it falls under a certain regulation as a motorized vehicle, so they actually require, under our law, require brake lights and turn signals, which they don't have. Scooters
Wow.
don't have those. So we would have to change the bylaw or have scooters that have these amenities. People don't wear helmets. It's
Right.
just,
That's got Chief Davis
And that,
right
pretty
and that was one of the
interesting.
concerns
Yeah.
15 years ago when people were going crazy. And those were the
Yeah.
motorized scooters that I'm talking about, not the,
Well, these are
the
motorized
These are
standard-
motorized
yeah,
scooters, you
right,
stand
yeah.
up and these are motorized,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mike, I just had
See Joe with his jazzy
is
too.
this under umbrella or anything? What is MAPC, like, who's the?
It's really a joint sponsorship. So 495 Metro West Partnership,
Okay,
the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and Transportation for Massachusetts.
oh, okay. So that's
T4
kinda
and my
cool.
favorite T4.
And this reminded me, I take the commuter rail, and you remember the van that the planning board made this
Yeah.
series? So I see that van and it's often full.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Oh, yes.
So it's like,
Though I also noticed, it looks like there was a MWRTA bus at the train station as well recently,
Well,
which, I don't know if that's on their regular route now or what, but I
don't
was,
believe that's their route. I think it must be on demand.
oh, okay, cause I was
Oh,
pleased to
interesting.
see that.
That's
I
good.
will say that we're looking, so Ed Berman and I have talked about the MWRTA running a shuttle from Legacy Farms down 135 up to the
Oh.
train.
that would
Oh,
be just-
wow.
Yeah.
Because of the traffic
would be
issues.
huge.
You'd be in a lot of
In
traffic
charge
for
Hopkins
sure.
for it, yes, very good.
So one last comment on this coalition, I would just encourage Michael to keep on your radar our concerns about our station.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really getting rusty. And must be extremely profitable, I have to say that.
Well, they're
4 or
they're-
5 thousands of
they're
parking
not
spaces.
willing
It
to
is the
give up
T.
any revenue at this point
Right.
for us to share and fix it up.
Now, the Burnham side fills up completely in the morning. If you get there late, there's no
yeah.
spaces left.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but
have to go to
even,
the other side.
but even when you get to the other side, I
You
was
gotta go
there
way
one
to
day,
the
I
other.
was pulling in, I was catching an 8:30 train, and I was like,
Way
I
down.
almost
Yes.
missed the train because I was all the way at the end and the train was up and over on the other side.
Right.
Going into Boston. I'm like,
Well,
Yeah.
yes, it's a
good
bit
thing
of
I
a
had my
walk.
flat shoes and not my heels.
Right, it's a bit of a walk, and it's an
You would take them
enormous,
off and run.
and it's an enormous lot. I mean, really.
Well, what, 700 and some odd cars?
It's one of the
800
biggest,
plus
if not the
everything.
biggest,
I
on the
think it's the
Worcester,
biggest on the- I think it is.
Worcester-Boston line,
Yeah.
and,
See what you
I
started,
think it
Mike?
needs a little TLC, so.
Yes.
and
All right,
it's my-
thank you.
We've mentioned that a few times to
Well,
Karen
we've-
and to Representative
Well, we've
Lewis.
gone in to meet with officials in Karen's office about a year ago, and
Even Governor
We're-
Bacon, when he came down and was looking at the tracks and he was right at the thing.
We harassed
There was a
them.
comment about, when are we gonna get this painted?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep, oh, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. Election update, C is the next.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I'll leave the discussions about the election results to
Board
you,
report.
to you folks. But I will just say, we had an incredible turnout. We had 66% turnout. 23% came at early voting, the rest on election day. 11,762 voters. Registered voters in town, we had 7,766.
Phenomenal.
In comparison, our annual town election on May 15th, 2018, we had 21% turnout, which we felt pretty good about,
Yeah,
actually.
for a local election, there was some
right.
contested things.
So this was a really, really great, great turnout, especially for a midterm or gubernatorial.
Yeah.
So we're really.
Well, Joe and I were standing out there yesterday various times, and it was amazing, the cars, and you can distinguish
Just
the
steady,
school
yeah.
cars from the voters, but just phenomenal, just the steady stream,
Yep.
Even at night, we thought it would slow down a little bit, not at all. They just kept
And
on
despite
coming.
some nasty
coming.
weather, the voters still came out,
Still
so.
came out.
So
So kudos to all of them.
many thanks to the staff that did this. The early voting took a lot. It was totally busy, so there was no break yesterday. Tara, God bless her, and Cindy, God bless her. I give them such a hard
Wonderful
time.
technical difficulties at certain points.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she
unfortunately.
wasn't her normal talkative self when I passed by, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming she was just pooped.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they put up with a lot with me, so, they deserve a lot of credit. And Jen
Thank
was
you
nice enough
To all of them.
supply them with sugar and candy. So, it was an exciting night, so I'll leave it at that.
And, the thing I'll add, when you look at some of the voting issues across the nation and people spending hours waiting in line, and, I got there in the morning very busy, and, had to wait 10 minutes. It was, that was probably the longest. I don't know how long the line got, but it was 10 minutes. So some people spend hours and
At 4
hours.
o'clock, someone I know went to vote, and the line was all the way down the hallway
Oh, so that's a
outside the
little
gym.
longer, yeah. And even then, but it's just, when I look at, I don't know how people allow that, to have hours and hours of waiting, and, at least that's one thing, we do, is like, people go in and vote without spending half a day, so
Well,
anyway.
some folks contend that's a form of voter suppression. by
Yes,
having, right,
I
those-
agree that it is.
yeah,
I think
so-
it is.
And
Yeah.
obviously, it's a huge problem, in other parts of the country, I don't know,
And it was interesting, later that evening, you had just left.
yeah.
You had just left. Car pulls up, gentleman stuck out his head out of the window. He said, "Do I need my license to vote?" I said, "Well, not here. Not that I'm aware of." No.
He was
Well,
driving.
he was driving, so hopefully he had it with him anyway.
Oh, there were other people, no, there were
So
other
that's
people.
right.
Too bad he wasn't on a
There were other
scooter.
people in the car.
Oh, okay,
There were other people
okay.
in the car, he wasn't
That's
alone.
a great story, Joe.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but think about it, other people in the car, they just
Right.
hop in the car and they take off, they may not have had their wallet, they're gonna go
Yeah.
vote.
That's right.
No, we're still,
But somebody having a license and not having it still driving, that's not unheard
Yeah.
of.
yeah.
That never happens.
All right. Do we,
Okay.
Village of America zoning change, did we kind of already?
We discussed that.
Okay. All
Okay.
right, so that leads us to board reports. So we'll start with you, Joe.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of things, I'd just like to just say thank you to all the folks who put on the Halloween parade. We haven't seen each other since that time, and it was a great time. We had 185 kids showed up, thank you. Yolanda was there, she saw the mayhem. It is a lot of fun, and the kids have a great time. And the parents that got dressed up, they were awarded as well. They were rewarded as well with some gift certificates. So that's something new that we did this year, and it will continue to happen. So that kudos to all those who contributed their time, their effort, and the monetary support was very helpful. I won't mention everybody, but just leave it at that. And I just as the chair of the Public Safety Building Committee, I just want to say kudos to those that were on the committee. We had some deadlines that we needed to follow and get through. We were a little nervous about getting the information out. We were able to get it out. The weather wasn't cooperative, but thanks to the two fire chiefs who went and did a lot of the forums with us, and to the committee members. I know Steve went to different groups, and myself went to different groups. Trying to think, Brett Walker went to some different groups as well within the community, and spoke about why the need and it was our time, especially with the financial assistance that we're getting from the state. So all of that in line, the stars had lined up right for us, and I think a lot of the people knew that, especially when it was just a little over 2-1 vote, which was very nice. It was surprising.
Yeah.
It was surprising. I know Michael was very nervous.
No, I was confident.
Oh, my goodness.
We should acknowledge, Joe, also, I think the fire department union was really active.
Yeah, they were very active.
Yeah.
They're out there, they did what they had to do. And I sent an email on to everybody and thanking them for what they did, but I just wanted to publicly thank the townspeople for supporting us.
Yeah.
For supporting something that has been needed for quite some time. And I'm very thankful, and they won't be disappointed. They won't be disappointed. I don't think anybody will, and again, we're moving in the right direction. I'd like to see it continue that way for anything and everything that's coming down the road with respect to the town.
Good.
Good job,
thank you.
Joe.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Same
Thank
to
you.
you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys
And to
are
you,
on
to
that.
all of you, the management team.
And also, just to thank, I think, the school committee for their support. We
Yeah.
went to them and, in the spirit of how we collaborate and work together, there was very little discussion.
Mhm.
They unanimously voted to support.
Right.
And I think it was reflected also in the responses you received today or last night. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, just reiterate what everybody's already said about Tara and her workers. Yeoman's job. Thank you so much. I know they were exhausted. I know it can get to your nerves and everything, but they did a great job. They were very professional throughout the day. I've heard a lot of great comments from the people that were in and out there. You get pushed to that limit sometimes, but everybody held their cool and did what they had to do. And so kudos to all of them and to all the workers that were there. They're not young chickens, and they're they were up there throughout the night. Did I say chickens?
You
Yeah,
did.
you did say. And when I was there, one of our new police officers were there, at the pole, but he was actually actively helping, moving people,
Yeah.
Good.
reporting back.
Good.
Who was it? One of the ones we just hired. Anyway,
Oh, that's,
looked like he was
well,
keeping
that's
busy.
good.
It's very good.
That's good. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yolanda?
So I too want to add my thank you and congratulations to Tara and her staff, not only for yesterday, but for the early voting. The response for people for early voting was unbelievable. They really appreciated being able to go in more on their schedule, and to see that we had 23% do early voting, I think is big. So that was
It's a good thing, too.
Yeah, can you imagine if they had all shown up yesterday? Couple of things. Last Thursday, the YMCA had their annual fundraiser, and I was able to attend that, which is always fun. They have a silent auction, they have a live auction, and on the tables they had a book that was written by David McGivelry, who is the BAA race director, and I was sitting with Beth and a few other people, so I was able to get our table's copy. I was able to get him to autograph the book because he was there, and I'm going to donate it to our Ashland Public Library, so it's in our library. Tomorrow morning, I'll be heading over to our Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting. We're going to be continuing our discussion about a landline project, so this is how we can tie in our Upper Charles Trail to this more regional, across the state trail system that's going in place. So that meeting is tomorrow morning. Tomorrow night, I'm going to the Metro West Chamber of Commerce, their event. It's their annual meeting, and they're celebrating 125 years of the Metro West Medical Center.
Where is that being held?
That is at the Sheraton tomorrow night.
Nice.
Yeah. And then MSBC for the Minda School Building Committee. We have our third meeting next week. Today, we had an online session with the MSBA regarding the RFP process to get our agent that we would use for the design and to do the feasibility study. So it's a whole long process. So we had our online
Are you
session with
involved,
them.
like, there was that phone call that we got instructions for? so
Yeah,
that's
I
the-
sat in on that as a member of the committee. That, I think they send it to the full board, but it's not, we don't all
No, I
have to do
wasn't,
it.
yeah,
So we'll be working on that process, and we have our next meeting next Tuesday at 7 PM at the Mendez.
Very good.
Anyone is welcome to come and sit and listen. And then the last thing I want to report on, and I'll have more final information on this, is I'm also on an MMA policy committee, and we look at bringing best practices forward to present at the MMA meeting in January. And one of the best practices that we're going to be presenting talks about use of social media as board members. And one of the items that's being discussed is if, as a board member, we post not just facts, but our opinion, and there are other board members other select board members on that board on Facebook, because we're expressing our personal opinion, is that considered deliberation and or an open meeting law violation? So I'm gonna find out more information on that and share it with all of us, because I think it's
That's-
important that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very timely. I think it's, a lot of towns do have social media policies, and it might
Yeah.
be something that
They're
we
looking at.
get into and
Yeah.
develop. And, according to our revised charter, this board needs to come up with a code of conduct. Now, I don't believe our charter's been approved yet at the state.
No.
It hasn't.
The home rule petition hasn't. gone
Hasn't,
through.
so until that passes, it's not something that's imminent, but that is part of the process. So I think it's a valid conversation. I think, we just need to also be cognizant, certainly of freedom of speech and First Amendment issues, so.
Yep.
Uh,
all
just
I
a
have.
couple things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
You done?
I'm good. I'm all set. Thank
Okay.
you.
So just a couple things. The farmer's market is having their traditional Thanksgiving indoor market at the middle school. It's Saturday before Thanksgiving, that's the 17th of November. It's 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the middle school. And, it's always great opportunities for, there's still produce available, but also preparation for Thanksgiving pies and all that good stuff. So
And
that's
to
the
begin your
17th.
holiday shopping.
You can start holiday shopping. That's correct. So what is it? Is Black Friday's the
Friday.
following week, so you can start to prep
We'll
for
be
that.
busy.
Get in the
We'll-
right.
We're meeting just.
So, secondly, the railroad crossing that was repaired over the past weekend. It's actually a pleasure to drive over the railroad tracks now.
Well,
And
I don't know about
I'm
that,
just
but-
amazed at how efficient and quick that process occurred. And, going there on Friday, being downtown on Friday and seeing that mound of stone and that was being prepped, and then to just kind of see the process periodically over the weekend. And, Sunday afternoon it was finished. So very, very efficient, and, hopefully, people are pleased with the difference in driving, so driving over the tracks. So lastly, just want to make note, Sunday is Veterans Day, and it's, the holiday is actually on Sunday, but it's celebrated on Monday. And I think it's just an opportunity to reflect certainly on our families, our friends, our residents that are veterans, we're veterans. So just want to make note of Veterans Day 2018.
Actually, Rob, can I add one more thing? So on Sunday afternoon, I was at the Diwali event. Michael was there as well.
I think Steve was there too.
Yes,
Right,
Steve was
Diwali.
there. You Diwali'd.
Yep.
And today is actually the first day of Diwali, so happy Diwali to
Celebrate.
everybody.
Yeah, I'm
And
sorry I
there's
missed
there's
that.
actually additional Diwali events coming up. I
There's
think there's
something
something.
this coming weekend.
There's
The
something
17th, yeah,
Saturday at
Saturday.
the
With an invitation.
library, and then there's something coming up, I think, on the 17th in at the high school, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a series of events.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Very good.
I just had a couple things, and we should talk about the next meeting date. Yeah, again, it just, congratulations to all of us, the town staff and the people for passing the public safety building. We've talked about that. I ran into Jack Lewis, and apparently the legislature, and I think we knew this, is dealing with the open meeting law and suggesting changes. Did we? And so one of the things, yeah. Well, off the top of my head, I told him a number of
Make
things.
it apply to them?
Yeah, well, that's not happening, but I actually
Why
said that.
not?
Well, that could be one of our comments, yes.
Do as
So
I
my
say.
suggestion is that we put this on our radar screen to come up with a bunch of comments to send to Jack and
Yeah, I mean, I
Karen.
don't think it'll be looked at until next session.
Okay,
I don't
so-
think it's happening
so
between
Only
now.
formal right now.
Yeah.
Is it? Well,
It's something
maybe
they're
the
looking
time.
at for next session.
Well, it may be time to like get our oars in there, like if certain things, and maybe we should put on a future agenda just to review what are the issues have been. And then I just wanted, if you remember several months ago, you guys kind of gave me the mandate to meet with sustainability about net zero projects. So we met last week and kind of started the process of looking at that, both really as a community. I think people understand that the town has really done a lot, and this latest thing where we might have zero electric bills is really
Yeah, that's
something.
awesome.
So we're gonna kind of start with this community survey where you look at what your greenhouse gas profile is, and then as a benchmark, and then see how we can improve on it as a community. So that process has started. I want to let you know that.
Very
So,
good.
Great.
okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. So I guess my question is, do we want to leave it, or change it? And then I think you mentioned we may have to meet next week.
Well, no,
For
we might have to meet on the 21st to do the tax classification hearing, because it was advertised for that.
We advertised it for Wednesday, the 21st. Were we not looking at a calendar when we did that?
We
or-
thought we were gonna do a meeting.
Well, it was scheduled, so.
It was scheduled.
It was? It wasn't on my
Are you-
calendar.
Is everybody in town on
Yeah,
the
fortunately,
21st?
I originally was gonna be out of town, but I am gonna be around for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so can we consider, if we do meet on the 21st, just consider kind of a short,
A
modified?
very specific agenda, and
All right.
Yeah.
could
I'm
we
all for it.
possibly even meet early that night? Or
Sure.
is
We
it
could.
scheduled for 7?
It's
the hearing?
scheduled for 7:15, but we could meet
But we
early.
could-
There's no reason we
7.
can't start earlier,
Sorry.
like.
But we could meet
Start
early.
early and have that be
6.
our last
Do
thing.
a 6 o'clock meeting?
Yeah, and that's good. That would
6.
Yeah.
force us to.
To get things done.
It's
Yeah.
just difficult with my schedule, so
Oh,
6,
that's
but
right.
we could do 6:15, 6:20.
Okay.
I mean, you don't get lit out early the day before Thanksgiving?
Well, I have to check. Sometimes it's
So-
me that's.
Can you check, and if we can do 6, start at 6?
Which boss do you have to check with?
Me.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we could tentatively try 6, and let me check my schedule, okay?
Yep.
Wouldn't be much later than that anyway. So we're on for the 21st.
Yep.
Okay, so that answers that question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's bringing pie for afterwards?
Susan.
I have been,
I have one last thing I just want to.
Okay, sure.
I have been told not to make any pies this year.
What?
So my 9 pies will not be made this year.
Oh,
Sure.
Make one and bring it.
Bring it? Okay.
All right.
so
Steve
I just
wanted
have
to
one
add
more
Aye.
comment, and it's directed at both Joe and Rob. They both were on WACA's election wrap-up show last night. I
Oh, yeah.
thought you guys both did a great job there,
Oh,
so.
well,
Thank you.
I wasn't
It
sure
was
anybody's
all- it was
watching.
all-
so.
There was no cue cards, nothing. It just
No,
came out
just,
the way it was.
yep, no, but you're both of you did a
Did
great
well.
job,
Thank
so.
you.
That reminds me, and I think you guys know all about this, so Barbara,
The FCC
approached me
really
about
did.
that, so we should,
Yeah, we did public
future.
service announcements.
so we should put that on a future agenda item, I
Yeah.
guess, okay.
I think that's one of the, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
That's
but
okay.
you brought that up, and we have that 5-town meeting coming up, or they're
Did they
looking at
set a
another
date?
date. They hadn't
No,
set a
they
date
never
yet.
did.
They actually, resent it, they
Did they?
resent out
They
the
resent the survey.
survey. So, but I think that's one of the things we need to bring up as an agenda item, is that.
Is the
so-
FCC
Well,
thing,
my
yeah.
question to Barbara was, Have you guys even talked to MMA about this? Because if it's an issue for us, it must be an issue for everybody.
Yeah, and I had the same thought, so that,
Oh, okay.
Good point.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
something we should
that's a very good
find
point to
out.
bring up, yeah,
Yeah.
And I
okay.
did look at their website, actually,
Oh, good.
and they didn't. They don't have anything related to that currently.
Really? So,
yeah.
yeah, this is really under the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we should talk about it. Okay. All right. Yes.
When we close the meeting, I think we wanna do a shout out to the clockers.
Yes. If we,
Miles? Anyway.
Miles, are
we
you
can
ready
close the
for
meeting
this?
first. Okay,
Before?
yes. Yep,
Yeah,
Very
not a
good.
problem.
motion to adjourn.
All
I'll
those in
second that.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Oh, meeting adjourned.